All right, welcome. Welcome to the Red Death Mask stream. Welcome, horror aficionados, friends, creepcasters, everybody. Today we're going to be finishing part two of I Worked at a Number Station and I'll Never Be the Same, as well as part three of I Shouldn't Have Recorded This Therapy Session. These are two stories that we started a few days ago that I started, and I'm just really looking forward to finishing them. So I wanted to do a stream early in the week and kind of fully digest both of them. So while they're fresh in my mind, um, real quick to just do a little recap, the Creepcast new episode dropped today, and I thought it was a really good episode. I specifically wanted to just talk about how um, the whole clown bit of this idea of having a clown that uh, is your therapist was really fucking hilarious. I loved that. With the clown that has a monkey secretary that's just in a cage going. I thought that was genius, and they said it would make a great two sentence horror, um, which I agree with. But I also just think that it would make a really awesome like comedy horror story about like this person being, or even just as a meme story on the Creepcast subreddit, like I went to grief counseling, and my therapist wasn't what I expected, or my therapist gave me some bad advice or something like that, and then just from that you create a story, that's just has all the ridiculous stuff like sitting on a whoopee cushion, or the clown anytime you're like, my parents were killed in the car crash, and the clown does a slide whistle. I just think that would be a fun idea for a story, and somebody should expand on it for the sake of comedy. It wouldn't be a serious horror story, but it would be surreal, hilarious, I don't know, sketch bit. It doesn't have to be. It wouldn't have to be in a written format. You could literally make that into a comedy sketch, and it would just be hilarious. But yeah, it's just something I wanted to mention at the top here because I thought it was a very good idea, and I would, yes, it would make a good two sentence horror, but I think it could be a lot more than a two sentence horror. I think you could do a whole, you know, sketch bit of that, and it would be super funny. Like you could have the clown, like I was thinking, like you could have the clown, like it's a psychiatrist too, so the clown's writing her prescriptions, but then the clown is just he's writing her prescriptions uh to essentially just get drugs from her, and he's like, bring your medication to our next session, and then he's just like taking them from her, shit like that, like just really ridiculous funny stuff. But anyways, I just wanted to bring that up. It was a good, interesting story, and it had a lot of funny moments. But probably what I liked, kind of counter to what Hunter and Isaiah said, what I liked the most about the story was the idea of finding a painting in a hoarder's house and just stepping into another reality. I always like, alternate reality stuff, or like in a page master style where it's like you step into a painting or a painting comes to life. I've just always found that really intriguing and really cool, and kind of like how they said it, how it's like a Chronicles of Narnia thing, you know. Um, but I think what I like, uh, you know, I've always found portals fascinating for horror stories. Whether it's a, you know, a portal to another dimension, or whether it's just like a portal in which, you know, even like an Indian in the cupboard where it comes to life, like it brings things to life, like just stuff like that. I always find that fascinating, and learning the rules of like how the portal works, I think is just always a fun mechanism for horror and for storytelling. Um, because it's not always so black and white, or it's not always so like, oh, you go in the portal and this happens every time. It's like, well, maybe it only happens sometime. It's just a good way to set up expectations and then subvert those expectations. So yeah, I really liked it, but yeah, that is all I have to say about that. I'm not going to keep rambling. I want to get into the stories. Let me just real quick here share out a few links to places. Let's get a little bit of a mood. All right. So just a little quick recap. Um, I believe our main character in this story. I'm gonna turn it down. It's a little loud on my end. I believe our main character in the story is Emma. She was journalist. She kind of choked on her first interview for a. She kind of choked during her first interview for a, or like her first on-air appearance, and so now she got a job working at a number station, but basically it's a news station. So um one thing I really liked about the first part of this story is it did a really good job setting up that there's this old news station in Florida, that it used to be this broadcasting station that apparently the CIA used to broadcast all these random numbers, and they said it was a counter espionage thing to where it was supposed to convince like the Soviets or whatever that there was a code in it, and they'd spend all this time trying to break the code, and it would keep them from looking into other things, which people agree is kind of a weird explanation. It doesn't make that much sense. Like, why would you build this whole station and, you know, broadcast all this stuff, which the story does bring up, and there's been multiple people who kind of ask questions about that or are curious about that. And the one guy who brought it up got transferred quickly. Oh, what's up, Professor Creepin? Appreciate you, man. Thank you for stopping by. I'm just doing a little recap as to part one of the story here of I worked at a number station and I'll never be the same. So yeah, basically we have our main character Emma, and she's a journalist, but she's working now as a producer of the news in this station in Florida. She's working behind the camera, and essentially she's working at this news station that used to be this number station where they used to broadcast these random numbers from, and it was like a counter espionage tactic for the CIA, or at least that's the CIA's official line, was that it was just random numbers to like confuse enemies who are spying on us. But essentially she's working at the station, and a few of her coworkers, one of her coworkers now has gone missing after they found basically like a secret room where they weren't supposed to enter, and it's assumed to be that that's actually where the numbers were broadcast from. It's kind of what it's hinted at. And yeah, so there's some creepy stuff going on at this news station. Nothing outright whatever false, or like nothing outright bad has happened. Like one person got transferred to a different job, but here, let's put this on a loop here. Yeah, but the other person, just when they found the room, all of a sudden she didn't show up at next week at work. So there's kind of some hinky, fishy stuff going on, and we don't really know. But so far, what I was saying, what I like about the story the most is it's a cool setting for a horror story, because you know it's like they're on sets, you know, there's news desks and all that stuff. But what's cool is like this whole place has like cameras and, you know, audio and all that stuff. So I feel like it's kind of an unusual setting for horror, because, you know, it doesn't seem as mysterious, at least on the outside. When you learn the story about the numbers that the station used to broadcast, then it definitely gets a lot more mysterious. But alright, so without too much further ado, let's start reading here. So, I worked at a number station and I'll never be the same. Part 2 of 2 by Fancy Phoenix _YT. For the next... What's up, rude dude? You're always here. I can always count on you stopping by. Oh, I'm good. I'm not as tired as I was during my last stream. You know, I got some more sleep. The last week of work was brutal. We were down some people, and the shifts were just really long, but I still wanted to stream, and I still did. But that last Friday after I streamed, you know, that Friday morning, and then I went to work, or Thursday, I mean, and then I went to work Thursday night. That night was fucking brutal. Listening on my work PC, hell yeah, fuck yeah. Well, thanks for stopping by. Let's get into it. For the next couple of months, I thought it was business as usual. Turnover was as high as ever. For every new hire we gained, we lost someone else. That sounds like my job. We literally just had someone's last day today, and yeah. Oh God, why is it? Yeah, I'm glad I'm back too. Um, okay. For every new hire we gained, we lost someone else. I was continuously working 6 days a week. I was always training new people, always doing my best to keep my team happy despite the chaos. I was slowly drowning. We've all been there, right? We've all been treading water, so to speak. I'd come home every night exhausted and stressed out, yet unable to get a good night's sleep. Every day it was a struggle to first force myself to go into work. When I was at work, I get these terrible headaches and my appetite was non-existent. The production side of our shows began to suffer. I made rookie mistakes, switching to the wrong camera, playing the wrong stories, sometimes skipping stories altogether. Oftentimes, I wouldn't even notice anything was wrong until the rest of my team would call it out. I felt like more of a liability than a leader. During those months, when I wanted to be alone, sneak back into the server racks and just pace around, and every time I'd inevitably find myself staring at that door, its do not enter sign seeming to mock me. I started taking my lunch there. I enjoyed the alone time. I enjoyed the distant white noise of the control room, and I enjoyed listening for the voice. Oh yeah, so there was a voice. It was like once they went through that door, there was another bigger door or something that they heard a voice behind, right? Forget what it said though. I kind of want to hear. Kind of want to freshen up. Okay. Oh, she didn't hear it right. I think. Okay, so there was the phone, a feminine voice too quiet to make out the words. To this day, I'm not sure. Yeah, so there was a voice on the phone that said something that they both heard, but Tabitha admitted to hearing, and then Tabitha, her coworker, didn't show up to work after that. Yeah, okay. That had something to do with what was on the whatever happened to Tabitha had something to do with whatever was on the other side of that door. Yet my answers were blocked by a thin sheet of paper. With no other options left to me, I rested my ear against the door, closed my eyes. I sat listening for 30 seconds or so, hearing nothing but my own breath and the distant sound of control room equipment. I was about to leave when I finally heard it. A feminine voice, too quiet to make out any words. To this day, I'm not sure whether there was anything in that room playing audio. It could have been that I just sat in silence long enough that my brain filled the silence with something. But I do know for certain that it doesn't matter one way or the other. If I'd really heard something or if I just convinced myself I had, either way, it held my entire attention for that minute or so, and that's all I need. Yeah, so she didn't hear it say anything in particular, but she heard an a feminine voice, it says. So okay, so now we're kind of caught up on that. um uh, uh, Started taking my lunch there. I enjoyed the distant noise of the control room. I enjoyed listening for the voice. It had become a ritual for me, sitting in the dark with my eyes closed, just listening and waiting. Sometimes I heard it, sometimes I didn't, and most of the time I wasn't quite sure one way or the other. But this relaxing ritual of mine didn't help with my work performance. I was becoming humiliatingly bad at my job. Every show was littered with errors. Even when I was paying extra close attention and double checking my every action, I'd still mess it up. I wonder if the same way that they were changing the stuff up on the other guy, that if they're doing that on her, if they're like making her performance worse so they can get rid of her. But although that might be true, it's also true that it seems like they kind of need her because no one else can even halfway do her job, and that's why she's working so many hours and stuff. So I don't know. Interesting. I'd see one camera angle listed on the rundown. I'd cut to it, and my team would call out to me saying I'd cut to the wrong angle, and my team was right every time. I was less and less capable of doing my job every day that passed. This led to stress, which led to sleeplessness, which led to headaches. It was the perfect cocktail of awfulness for everyone involved. My boss would have been totally justified in firing me, but they didn't have anyone else to take my place. Oh yeah, Professor Creepin. Well, dude, yeah, we should. I know you have your channel and stuff, and we don't have to do it on mine. But I've brought up to people that I think I've even brought up to Rude Dude and maybe what's his name? The guy who wrote Ross Road, Keith, I believe is his name. But I brought up that I want to have writers on to just actually talk to them about stories, like, maybe talk to them about their stories that they've written, but I also want to read stories with people. Like, I'd love to do that, so I'd be fully down. Message me on, Instagram or on Discord, man, and we should do that. We should, pick out a few classics or something and do it. I know you cover a lot of classic creepy pastas, and you do like a lot of the stuff that like Creepcast, like a lot of the sequels and stuff that Creepcast doesn't cover, which I love. But I try to focus on like newer stuff that's on either Creepcast or Creepcast Submission. I'm trying to focus on stories that are newer, that are maybe slipping through the cracks or just not getting as much attention. But yeah, we should totally do it. One of these times for sure. I'd be hella down, doggy. Sorry, back to the story. Um, but they didn't have anyone else to take my place. Yeah, that's a sort of, you know, it's that whole thing of like, what are they gonna do? Fire me? I already hate this job, and um, they're already working me into the ground as it is. So it's like they're just gonna have to find somebody else to do the same thing. One day, a new PA that we'd hired came up with a solution. Everyone can say the next cue out loud together. That way, everyone is on the same page. He was just trying to help, and it was a good idea. But the idea of my team having to tell their director what to do next was a humiliating prospect. We tried it, and it did help, but making less mistakes didn't magically make me any less burnt out. After 2 weeks of my team directing their director, I decided to write up my 2 weeks' notice. I shouldn't have felt bad about the idea of quitting. I was overworked, underpaid, and I was slowly killing myself for bosses that didn't appreciate me. But I felt bad anyways. I'd convinced myself that I'd be letting everyone down, and that it'd be a betrayal to leave them. Logically, I knew that wasn't true, but anxiety isn't always something you can logic your way out of. Very true. Very good line. See, I think that's another thing that I'm enjoying about our narrator in this story, about Emma. Yeah, her name's Emma. About Emma in this story is like the way that she's describing a series of events seems very, like, it just seems very realistic to like the emotions of a person. Like that was one thing in the Creepcast story today that like didn't make so much sense, is that they were talking about how the guy showed him the painting that was the portal to the other dimension, and the guy's just like, yeah, let's go in. And then of course the narrator never even said like, I was shocked that my boss was so down to explore this portal or whatever. There was never any like natural hesitation. And I think that's fine. I don't think it was a bad story, but this story, from like an emotional standpoint, it seems very realistic. Like the order of operations for this character seems very believable. Like she's a younger person. She's desperate to succeed in her career. She already failed in one aspect of her career, and now she's getting the second chance. And so it's believable that she would like become this workaholic and like work herself to the bone. And she stayed during the hurricane coverage to like make sure that the station could get information out to people and help people. And it's just super believable that somebody would do that in that situation, and then that as a consequence of that they would get entirely overworked. And I think also in the back of her mind this mystery is eating at her too, and so those combination of things will lead, it's all just building and building, and it's like a volcano. Eventually it's going to erupt, whether that erupts in the form of her like having a meltdown at work, whether that means that she's going to break the rules that she knows she's not supposed to, and she's going to end up going in that room and figuring something out. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I like this build up. I like the characterization of the narrator is very realistic and believable, and I'm buying it. I'm feeling the way they're feeling. I'm relating to it. It's very good. But anxiety isn't always something you can logic your way out of. It was a Saturday night, and I was the last one at the station. I was finally alone. I released all of the emotion that I had built up that week. In moments like those, I'd always imagine my emotions exploding from a dam. A week's worth of anxiety, embarrassment, stress, and frustration, all of it finally let loose in an explosive moment. But it's never been like that for me. I'd grown so used to holding my emotions in that it was a physical effort to pry the safeguards away. After minutes of effort, the tears finally began to flow. Once the flow of tears began to slow, I began typing up my 2 weeks notice. When I was a couple of sentences in, I got an email from William. I sniffed and wiped my eyes as I opened the email. Emma, probably still at the station, so go check on something for me. Server farm is getting too cold, and the liquid nitrogen flow needs to be turned down. There's a knob on the front. Turn it down until it's barely flowing. It's easy enough that even you can manage it. Oh, fuck that, dude. See, and William hasn't really been a dick to her as of yet, but this would send me over the edge. If I'm already staying late at work and I'm already in tears, like, this is fucking... Yeah, this is bullshit. And that last line. Like, because the first part of the email, it didn't really read like he was like asking her to do something else. He was giving her another job. So I was like, oh, maybe it's not so bad. But then that last line just fucking twists like a knife, bro. It's like a fucking dagger. As somebody who, especially at work and stuff like that, is a perfectionist, and does take, like, if my boss makes any comment that's not like flattering about my work, I take it super personally. Like, and that's one thing I've had to learn, that like, you know, that like just because your boss critiques your work, it doesn't mean he's critiquing you as a person. You know what I mean? But to me, it's like, my my work ethic. I was like, that is me. You know what I mean? Like, I take that so personally that, yeah, I'm just feeling for her. And yeah, that line, that it's easy enough that even you can manage it. I'd be like, fuck you, William. If you're so pissed off, if my work has been so subpar, why don't you stay for one of these things and help me? That's the other thing. Like, she's never been a director or producer of a news show before. She has a degree in like journalism, but no one really taught her how to do this job. She just kind of was thrown into it and just figured it out as she goes. So I don't know. That rubs me the wrong way. But again, very believable interaction, very believable email. You know, I already felt miserable, and the last line made things even worse. William was always a jerk. Okay, maybe he did do some other jerky thing. Or wait, no, William's not her boss. William is that guy. He's like that engineer guy who came in when they had to go into the server room or into the back room, the numbers room. Yeah, William. Yeah, and he was a fucking dick, and he always speaks in like one word sentences and shit. Okay, I'm pretty sure that's William. William was always a jerk, but that line implied that my incompetence was becoming common knowledge. I wanted to ignore the email out of spite, but would that make me look even stupider? Stood up, still sniffing, as I shuffled to the control room. Whoa. God, I really want a fucking mic arm. You know how they have. I have this type of a little. It just annoys the hell out of me because it always seems like it's about to fall over. Sniffled as I shuffled to the control room. I found the liquid nitrogen tank and did exactly as William said in his email. Now that distraction was over with, I could get back to the important business of crying and resigning. 2-week notices should be simple, but every word I typed felt like a marathon. Each word was more difficult than the last. I got to the point where I was taking long breaks between each word. It started as a whisper. I had been holding my head in my hands, preparing to finally send the email I'd been drafting, when I thought I heard a voice. Is that my name? I stood up from my cubicle and scanned around. I couldn't see anyone. The only light was coming from from my computer's monitor. I was on a small island of light in an ocean of darkness. I stood and listened for a long time. Finally, I heard it again. I instinctively spun in the direction of the control room. No, that wasn't my name. Was that even a sound at all? It was more feeling than sound. It was a brush against my senses. It was an invitation. Slowly and carefully, my feet carried me to the control room, my footfalls dead silent on the carpet. Gradually, the sound, the sensation, the invitation grew louder. Soon, it was more than an invitation. It was a desire. I wanted nothing more than to see what was in the control room. I passed through the gateway of the control room, continuing my slow, consistent stride. As I got closer to what had become my desire, it began to morph once more. It became more than a desire. It was gravity. I was being pulled in, every step easier than the last. I was halfway through a server maze, the gravitational pull. I was halfway through the server maze, the gravitational pull bringing me closer and closer to the metal door that was everything I desired. Suddenly, I tasted salt. My steps faltered. I had to practically grab hold of a server rack to stop my forward momentum. Still, partly in a trance, I found a reflective part of the server rack and looked at my reflection. Tears were flowing freely down my face, and my mouth was frozen in a toothy smile wide enough to catch my tears. My own horror freed me. My smiling reflection was replaced with a mask of terror. I felt the gravitational force release me, and I stumbled backwards. Then I ran. Adrenaline carried me past the final server rack in record time. The exit to the control room was only 10 yards away. A wave of sound cascaded into me, loud enough that I crashed to my knees and grabbed my ears, and for the first time, I clearly heard the numbers. 16, 5, 18. I clapped my hands over my ears and screamed. It was the director's station speakers. They were cranked up supernaturally loud. Tears distorted my vision, but I knew the director's station well enough that I barely needed to see. I stumbled over and found the volume controls. I muted the entire system. Then, for good measure, I yanked the speaker's power cable out of the wall. So that's interesting, because that's the first time the numbers have been not on that, like, phone, or not in the past the door that she's not supposed to go in. After a couple seconds, I tentatively removed my hands from my ears. There were 2 full seconds of peace. Then I was struck by a blinding light. The entire multi-view wall of CRTs all turned on and flashed white at the same time. In my temporary blindness, I fell backwards. I blinked repeatedly as I lifted myself from the ground. Then I immediately dropped again when I saw what was on the monitors. What should have been 20 monitors felt like an infinity. I saw home movies from when I was a child. I saw class photos. I saw high school news stories I'd covered. I saw newscasts from the station and newscasts from other stations. I saw everything, and it was all wrong. Interesting. Okay. So pause here for a second. So she hasn't gone through the door yet that I can, or at least I don't think so. He hasn't gone into the, like, secret room that they found back in the server racks, right? Like, she was out. Yeah. The exit to the control room. Okay. Either way, it's kind of interesting because it's seeming like whatever these numbers are, whatever this station is, it is an, or whatever controls these numbers and controls this station and is behind the door is some sort of entity that it has some sort of omniscience, you know, which isn't where I thought the story was going. I mean, I guess maybe I did a little bit. Like, I thought, I did think that there was some sort of a design, because it seemed like the station, people were getting fired that wanted to find out the secrets of the station, so that there seemed like there was kind of a grand design. But I guess I wasn't expecting this whole have all the TV start playing like moments from her life and everything. That's interesting. I saw everything and it was all wrong. Those people in my home movies were not my parents. My classmates in the class photos had no faces. One of my high school broadcast stories was covering a student's funeral that had never happened. Every detail in the stories that had run on our newscasts were twisted. House fires became floods, murders became kidnappings. Tragedy was made typical. Typical was made terrifying. Interesting. I closed my eyes against it and turned away. I forced myself to my feet and opened my eyes to find the exit. There was no exit. There were no server racks. There wasn't even a floor. I was in an expanse of nothing. The only visible things were the monitors in front of me and the distant metal door behind me. I blinked my eyes rapidly, trying to clear my vision, but it made no difference. Whether my eyes were open or closed, the monitors and the door remained. The numbers began again. 16, 5, 18. It was deafening. It was a whisper. 3, 9, 5. It was in my skull. It was miles away. 22, 5, 13. Or I don't know. I forget I think it's a feminine voice that says the numbers. It was everything. 5. It was nothing. I had only one reason to exit. My purpose was to see what was behind the door and give it my undivided attention. I stumbled blindly. I couldn't see my surroundings. I only saw the door and the ever-pulsing red light that illuminated it. I could hear my drunken footsteps. I could only hear the numbers and Emma, a different voice, a distant voice. Emma, hear me. Hands on my shoulders, alcohol-tainted breath on my face. Someone was directly in front of me. Yet all I saw was darkness and the door. The same voice spoke again. It sounded miles away, yet I felt the shouted words on my face. Emma, nod if you hear me. I nodded. The voice continued in a firm tone. Repeat after me. The monitors are blank. There's nothing on TV. I cocked my head to the side. This was pointless noise. My purpose was mere yards away. Say it, he shouted, his hands tightened on my shoulders. Maybe if I play along, this distraction will get out of my way, so I mumbled. The monitors are blank. There's nothing on TV. The grip on my shoulders loosened, but the man's voice remained. Say it again. I complied and repeated it in a firmer voice. Don't stop saying it. I continued to repeat the meaningless phrase. Mean it when you say it. I started again, this time trying to visualize the words. The monitors are blank. There's nothing on the TV. I made myself picture blank monitors, a silent TV. Gradually, the deafening numbers became muffled. I remember where I was, and I recognized the voice. William? Yes, keep saying that phrase, don't stop. I repeated it once more, but my voice was shaky, and my whole body was beginning to tremble. William, I can't see. Whether my eyes are open or shut, it's just the door. All I can see is... The grip on my shoulders morphed into a firm hug as I heard William say, Keep going, it'll be all right. All you need to know is that the monitors are blank and there's nothing on TV. Say it till you believe it. And as you talk, I'm going to lead you out of here, okay? So is he with her or is he like talking? Is he like talking over like a PA system? Interesting. I don't know. This is intense though. This kind of ramped up quickly. I thought it was, I don't know. I thought it was gonna, like, she was gonna kind of, and I know she was kind of in a trance walking back there, but I thought she was gonna like slowly peek behind the door and slowly, I but I like the pacing. I like that it like ramped up into this really intense like battle for her sanity almost. It's cool, but I thought this section of the story would have more like sneaking around. But it's good. I like it. I said it again and again into the void, and every time I did, we took a couple more steps away from the door. My voice felt hoarse by the time I felt the cool night air on the back of my neck. At some point during the walk, I had squeezed my eyes shut. I ceased my chanting and slowly opened my eyes. To my relief, I saw the cloth of William's shirt damp with my tears. He took a step back while keeping the protective hand on my shoulder. He smiled down at me. There you go. You're going to be alright, kiddo. In that surreal moment, all I could think was, that's the first time I've seen this man smile. Things must be bad if he's actually being nice to me right now. I must have had a strange expression on my face because the fake smile he'd painted on fell away into a concerned look. Then reality caught up to me. I began to rattle out frantic questions. William, what was that? Did you see all those horrible things on the monitors? What is behind that? A painful squeeze on my shoulder cut me off. He gave me a warning look as he said, nothing happened in there. The monitors were all blank. Then he said it again, this time nodding as if he agreed with his own statement. My dry mouth was hanging open and the questions died. All I could bring myself to say was a whispered response. The monitors are blank. There's nothing on on TV. William drove me home. He parked haphazardly on the front lawn of the station. As I sat in his truck's passenger seat, I noticed some sort of metal hanging from his rearview mirror. It was round with an eagle and a shield with a star on it. If I'd been of sound mind, I'd have taken a closer look, but I was only holding myself together through constant repetition of that same phrase. Sometime along the drive, I mustered up the willpower to ask him about the email he'd sent me earlier that night. I didn't even have the energy to be surprised when he told me he had sent no such email. I called in sick the next day before I could even make up a story about a fake illness. My boss told me to take the entire week off. The week was a blur. If my thoughts started to drift toward the station, I'd start to hear the numbers again, so I banished them away with a new mantra. But the monitors weren't. So I banished them away with my new mantra. But the monitors weren't blank. To this day, almost every single time I look at a screen, there's something wrong. Most of the time it's simple, like a word facing backwards, or the color of a logo is completely wrong. Sometimes it's infuriating, like a login screen that permanently says I've entered the wrong password. But there have been worse examples. One time I saw a text from my mom that said my dad had died in a car crash. When I called her in tears, she told me that the text was just asking what I wanted for my birthday. Another time, my phone lit up with an alert that said a nuclear bomb had detonated in Iran. One of the worst was when I took a picture of my parents' dog, but when I looked at the camera roll, all I saw was the dog's headless corpse. Oh shit. Poor puppy. No, puppy. No one else sees these things. I find myself having to question the people around me just to figure out if what I'm seeing on the screen is real. And if I start thinking a little too hard about if what's on the screen is fake, then the numbers start to get louder. My brain was at war with itself. I needed to know what the hell this was, but I needed to not think about it. I needed to find out how to fix my condition, but I needed the monitors to be blank. No matter what angle I looked at it from, the first step toward answers was heading back to the station. I may as well have never returned. A week after the incident, I forced myself to go back to work. My boss met me at the door. Then he walked me straight to the station's manager office, where I was offered a promotion, raise, and a bonus. Oh shit. The offer was double what I'm currently making. The only catch was that I signed an NDA and I had to transfer to a station on the other side of the country. I refused the offer. Dun dun dun. We're almost to the end of the story, damn. Okay. I refused the offer. I put on my journalist face, stood my ground, and demanded answers about what was going on at the station. I was escorted back to my car as my boss explained the details of my severance package. Maybe I should have taken the offer. Yeah, you think? It's alright though. I respect her for trying to get answers. But looking back now, I think I would have ended up in the same place no matter what my response had given I had given my station manager. I could never have held on to a job that would require me to watch screens. I doubt I even had enough sanity and willpower to hold a job as a barista. I made a few more pathetic attempts at finding answers. I called my friends that were still at the station, but they had been told I'd suffered a mental breakdown, and all I got from them was, "It was nice working with you. Hope you get well soon." I filed a report with the local police department, but they said that there wasn't any evidence of a crime being committed. I even made a Freedom of Information Act request to the CIA about the station, only to receive the same BS documents that had already been made public. I'd ended up moving back in with my parents. My pitiful investigation had only worsened my issues. Every screen was wrong. Whenever my thoughts strayed, bro, talk to William, like meet up with William outside of work and just be like, even though he saved, just be like, William, like, is my mind fucked forever? Can I no longer look at screens anymore? Like, what is the implications of this? You know what I mean? If you don't want to ask it, or if you can't, or he can't answer questions directly about the station, do the journalist thing and ask the right questions, you know, ask like, you know, say like, well, if you were me, what would you do, William? You know what I mean? Shit like that. Like, just speak in hypotheticals and get some answers that way. Whenever my thoughts strayed, I'd start to hear the numbers whispering at me. Whatever it was, I wanted nothing less than it wanted nothing less than my undivided attention at all times. I started to try and keep myself in a disassociated, unthinking state. If I didn't think, then I was safe. It's been a year. I'm still tormented every single day. But there was one day where I found some relief. I convinced my mother that what I saw was real. I described it to her once again in detail, and for the first time someone believed me. Convincing her actually made my symptoms improve. When she told me she believed me, and I knew she wasn't just humoring me, she wasn't just telling me a comforting lie. I know this for a fact because that night she said she heard numbers in her dreams. I'm so sorry. What? I know this for a fact because that night she said she heard numbers in her dreams. I'm so sorry, I lied to you all. I'm not a journalist anymore, and I never needed your help with the story. I just need more people to know about this. I need more people to believe me. I need more people to distract whatever this is so that maybe I'll have a chance to live a normal life again. You've read this through to the end. Question if what you're seeing on the screen is real. And if you think you're hearing numbers, remember the monitors are blank. There's nothing on TV. Oh, shit. That was a fun ending. I was not expecting that. That was really interesting, and I like that the end is just a big fuck you to the reader, like how what was the name? It was Candle Jack, you know, like that one creepypasta where it's like there is a notorious serial killer whose name cannot be mentioned. If his name is ever mentioned, if you ever see his name, if you ever hear his name, he will show up and kill you and whatever, cut off your hands and eat you or whatever. And then it's like, it is very important that you never mention Candlejack to anyone. And of course, at the end, it says Candlejack. And as a kid, you'd be like, no, you know, like Hunter said, like, oh, no. But I really liked this story. And I really liked this ending. I was like, how are they gonna end this story so quickly? It doesn't make any sense that our narrator never gets any answers. And that's just how they're gonna end the story. But I think the point is, yes, that you're left. You never really find out much in the story. I mean, we hear a woman's voice, we hear, you know, William's voice in the story. There are a few kind of context clues or hints, but we're basically told everything we're gonna know about the numbers in the very beginning. That it was a CIA project, that it was to distract people by making them think that there was a code, you know, and yada yada. But that's all we're really left with, and we don't get any sure answers. The only thing, this is what I'm thinking, clearly the numbers are some sort of supernatural thing, or they're a government like telepathy weapon, you know. So essentially what these numbers do is they hypnotize you. They make it so that you can't trust anything you're seeing, and that would be a really effective tool in war if, like, a country that you're fighting against, or you want there to be, you want to sow like distrust in this country, you want to make this country's government break down, you essentially broadcast these numbers or whatever it is, you know, this hypnotizing radio signal, whether it's numbers, whether it's a woman speaking, whatever it is, and essentially it makes it so all of a sudden anything you see on a screen you can't trust. So whether that's soldiers, whether that's citizens, you know, all of a sudden they're watching the news and they're seeing something horrible happen even though it's not happening or whatever. That's a very cool psychological weapon, you know what I mean? And then on top of it, and there is some precedence for this, like we know of, it's called the Havana syndrome. We know that like a bunch of people got sick from a noise in Cuba, and the United States actually ended up like removing all their diplomats from that area. Yeah, cognito hazard. It is a cognito hazard. just knowing about it is dangerous, right? That is, in the SCP universe, you're absolutely right, Professor Creepin. It is a cognito hazard. Um, but I think what's cool about this particular cognito hazard is that it's a sound that then, tricks your sight. So it's like, that's kind of cool. But like I was saying, it kind of reminds me of the Havana syndrome. There was a point where like all the diplomats in Cuba got sick, and they actually removed, like, the United States removed all their diplomatic people from the country because, like, most of them reported hearing a strange noise. Like, I don't know if it was over the course of weeks or whatever, but then all of a sudden they got, like, multiple of them got sick. They got dizzy. Like, I forget all the exact symptoms, but it's super crazy. So we know that these sort of auditory weapons exist, and neuro-linguistic programming is a real thing. So it's like, if they could capitalize on that, or create a kind of bigger weapon that all of a sudden made it so that every single screen you look at, I mean, think about that. Drone operators in the military wouldn't be able to fly, effectively. Ships in the ocean wouldn't see radar screens. Like, just as a weapon that's so threatening and so crazy. So to me, it definitely was some sort of thing, and for some reason, whatever is behind the door, or whatever creates this, they can't turn it off, because I think this weapon, this entity, whatever it is, kind of has a mind of its own, and so they just have to leave the station operational and leave it going on, and then whoever kind of stumbles across it ultimately gets fucked over by it. And that's why at the end we get our narrator being like, and so now I've tried to fuck you over just so that hopefully I don't get, or I can live a normal life, or my shit isn't as fucked up, Yeah, like the brown note from South Park. Yep. Exactly. The numbers are just another brown note. You'll shit your pants, and on every screen all you'll see is people shitting their pants. It's just a vicious circle. But yeah, super cool. So super cool, like, idea for just like a government, whatever conspiracy, secret, military industrial complex weapon. And I like that, yeah, we're not given, I mean, we're given enough because we see how it affects our narrator, and then because the narrator explains it well enough, and we're like, oh, because they're trying to curse us too. It's like, it's this whole idea of a curse, and you gotta pass it on. It's like those chain emails, where they're like, if you don't forward this to 10 people, you're gonna be cursed, those stupid things. It's a cool version of that. It's a really fun concept, and it was a really fun story, and I loved the emotional, like, writing of the story. I thought the character was super believable and likable, you know what I mean? I would like to see this author, I don't know how much other stuff they've written, but I would like to see Fancy Phoenix. I would like to see them, write another story with multiple characters. Like, right now we really just got into our main character Emma, into our narrator, and we got to see behind them. But I would like to read a story where, it's like multiple people, whether it's in a forest. It doesn't have to be a secluded place, because I really liked that it was a news station too. I thought that was a super cool setting. So, maybe it's a group of friends or group of strangers who are, whatever, all together at a retreat or just doing something. But anyways, because I really think that this was really strong, especially from just a character standpoint. I felt like I knew Emma. I felt like, I liked Emma. I wanted Emma to succeed, and when she failed or was struggling, I felt for her. And then also, I liked Emma so much that when she screws us at the end, when she curses us, I'm like, well, that sucks. I don't want to be cursed, but I'm like, I get why Emma had to do that. It's one of those ones where it's like, even if our narrator turns out to be the bad guy, you're like, you like him enough to where you're like, well, I get it, And so I think that is a sign of a really just a good fleshed out character. And it didn't take a lot. This was only a 2-part story. It wasn't super in depth. It just gave us a brief kind of overview of their life and where they're at. And then it just kind of got into the horror of the station and what these numbers bring on people who hear them, and why people avoid them so much. I really love it. I think that was great and a pretty unique, cool concept too. Here, I want to read some of the comments. Nice story and concept. No cheesy monster, no exposition, just because. A mystery around a real problem that exists with what we could call a realistic take on a person involved by accident in a well-kept secret. Not very scary, but believable. Very cool. Congratulations. Yeah, I would agree that, like, the only thing, if I had to point to like one thing I thought could have been better, or is to lean into the characters more, like lean into William a little bit more, lean into the other guy who got fired from the station. But also, like those moments when she was getting hypnotized to walk towards the door, or when her and Tabitha like went into the room or went behind the first door but not necessarily the second door. I'm kind of still confused on that. Anyways, and when they picked up the phone and all of that stuff, I would say just like to take a little bit extra time and because that will build the tension more. And yeah, but for a first draft especially, this was great. This was really great story, great character. Like I said, I'd like to see them do a more character piece, meaning multiple characters. But yeah, it was super, super fun. I'll read your next stories for sure. Keep it up. Yeah, I'm definitely a fan too. I will definitely read more stuff by this person here. I don't know if I always forget that you can follow people on Reddit, and I certainly need to start doing that with our authors, because it's just cool to see what people get up to. And it a great concept. Great concept, great story. Hats off to you. Great setting, super unique setting for horror. So yeah, just shout out to Fancy Phoenix YT. So now we're moving on to TJ Schultz 61. And for this story, let's see, it was posted 5 days ago. Maybe it's longer now. Yeah, 5 days ago, part 3 was posted. Parts 1 and 2, we kind of basically we had our narrator, who is the counselor, you know, and essentially, if I'm trying to remember, like, he has this session with this guy who's like, I had a near-death experience. He like crashed a car into a telephone pole or something, and essentially he's like, I went into the afterlife, and what we think it is isn't what it is, or whatever. It was something kind of like that. And yeah, and then this was part 2, and this is just pretty short, so I'm gonna kind of skim over and read some of this out loud. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't, not in any familiar sense of the word. I never felt myself lose consciousness. No familiar lapse in time between dozing and waking. Just a strange continuity. The static, yeah. Oh, and then that's the other thing, is that our yeah, I didn't know that you wrote a story, Professor Creepin, but I will certainly send me a link. Even send it. Don't send it in chat, but just send it. Chat me on Reddit and send me on Reddit or Discord. I certainly will check out your story. I'll check out anyone's story. You know what I mean? And one of the things I'm hoping to do as I build my channel is I would like to not have to find stories on my own. Like, I mean, of course I'll always want to look through stories, but what I mean is, like, right now I look for stories, and I try to find ones that maybe have some upvotes and comments, but don't necessarily have a lot, and then I reach out to those people, and usually I hear back pretty quick. People have been great about responding, and they let me know if I can read their stuff, and yeah, so I'll certainly read yours, man. So yeah, our narrator, our therapist, he has a static droning ever since he kind of had this interview, this therapy session, and yeah, we've got kind of a sonic theme going on with these numbers and this droning. As I let go, the droning softened. I repeated this action. I couldn't tell if I was reacting to me or if I was somehow in control. I needed this to end. I had to try something. I shut my eyes tightly in one long breath. I exhaled. As the air left my lungs, the buzzing in my ears subsided. I continued, attempting to evacuate every last molecule of my lungs, and the static diminished to a whisper. When it felt like I had nothing left to give, I coughed, choking the air out. It felt like my diaphragm was in my throat, but I held on, desperately eking out one last puff of air. My final spluttery cough echoed, and everything fell silent. The static was gone. I was so quiet now that I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I shifted, and my organs squelched inside of me, taking care not to inhale. My lungs burned and my eyes squeaked open. I saw nothing. I blinked, and I was greeted by a deep blackness. I turned my head to where the foot of my bed should have been, but became nauseated when I realized I was no longer laying down. Yeah, so it seems like whatever, basically from what I'm remembering and reading here, he seems to now be in this afterlife sort of space, where this guy told them about it. They had this conversation, and it's like the guy opened his third eye to it too. My hands holding a pillow securely around my ears. I thought the static had gone, but listening closely, it was there, almost inaudible. I needed to see my client. Yeah, so he just kind of has this weird in the bed I don't know, like where he kind of is like out of body experience almost. And it's interesting. I think the first part definitely had more of like the story. This part is just kind of like him figuring out what is going on with this static that he's been hearing. But then it also mentioned in the first part how our narrator has like tinnitus, so I'm wondering if this is like it was part of his what's it called? It was like it's like his illness is starting to shift, and something that the patient did to him was like it co-opted the illness that he already has, and it's like using that illness to force him into this afterlife ethereal state, you know, type of thing. But anyways, let's get into part 3, because yeah, I remember that part 2, it didn't have much in terms of like story plot development. Cool, hell yeah, man. I'll pull it up once we're done. I do want to read part 3 of this story first, but it's not that long, so we should have time to get to yours as well. I shouldn't have recorded my therapy session part 3. Any and all critiques are welcome. Just trying to put myself out there and become a better writer. And yeah, this is a very interesting concept. And for a first time, I think that the author, for a first time story, I think that it's interesting, and I think they have I think you have potential as a writer. What is it? TJ Schultz 61. Keep at it, you know. Keep writing. I don't know if this is the final part of this story. We'll see, but keep writing, you know, just in general. Hold on, I think a kitty's trying to break into my room. Won't come in. Sorry. Wake up the other people in my house. But the kitty won't come in with the door shut, because then she'll be stuck in here. This had to be because of him. I didn't know how long I had lain there, plugging my ears. I didn't know if what I had experienced was real, a hallucination, or a dream. I knew I needed to see my client to know what he did to me. The digital clock on my nightstand was blinking 4:38. Useless. I checked the microwave, the oven, even the coffee machine, all blinking 4:38. I pulled my phone from my pocket. It was dead. My whole apartment was in such a state of disarray after the previous night. She just meows at the door, but then she won't come in because I want to shut it. Sorry. Cats. Can't live with them, can't live without them, am I right? It was dead. My whole apartment was in such a state of disarray after the previous night. I felt like I was wading through a junkyard. I searched for my watch, an old wind-up timepiece. It was sitting in the cup by the door, along with my car keys and wallet. I couldn't remember the last time I had wound it up, but I wore it daily. It read 7:39 a.m. while ticking away faithfully. Speeding out of my apartment in yesterday's clothes, I hurriedly made my way to the parking lot. About halfway to my car, I heard footsteps coming up behind me. I quickened my pace, and just as I reached the door handle, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun around, panic tightening in my throat. It wasn't my client. We spoke at the same time. "Can you hear it? Did you follow me?" My client repeated himself. The noise, can you hear it too?" Seeing my client here was almost as jarring as everything had experienced to this point. In a flustered voice, I responded, "The static?" "Oh God, you do hear it." He sounded both relieved and defeated. I cautiously shushed him after his shouts had drawn the attention of a few neighbors. I smiled nervously while waving to them as they got into their cars. When he appeared to calm down, I asked him, "How did you know that? Why didn't you mention this in our session?" "I didn't know if you would believe me. I wanted to, but I thought it might be too soon. I thought that I would sound crazy. Once our session was over, though, I felt like I could trust you. I wanted to talk it over with you." "So you followed me home?" I asked, taking a step back. "I'm sorry, I haven't really been thinking straight," he said sheepishly. "You could have asked for extra time," I said. His confession had both angered and unnerved me, but I needed to stay focused. "I wanted to talk more privately," he said, "off the record." "Listen," I said, "I'm not doing this here. I just want to know why this is happening. Come with me to the office and we can discuss this further. I'm already running late." My hands were shaking as I turned the key in the ignition. My client fumbled with the seatbelt before buckling himself in. I hadn't noticed before, but with him in such close proximity, it's almost like the static had doubled, not in volume, but like there were two separate sources. We drove in silence for a short while. I noticed him fidgeting while playing with the ring on his index finger. He kept spinning it as he hummed quietly to himself. He wasn't humming any particular tune. Rather, he was matching the pitch of the static and occasionally harmonizing with it. "Why are you doing that?" I asked. I was trying to remain calm, but my trembling voice betrayed me. "What? You're humming. Does it help?" "I'm not humming." "Yes, you were, just now. I heard you." I was trying to keep my eyes on the road, but his confusion forced me to turn and look at him. "Listen, a lot of weird shit has been happening since that car crash. I blacked out. I see things. Shit that can't be real, but I know it is. You gotta help me, man." I turned my eyes back to the road, swerving slightly to get back in my own lane. "We'll be lucky if I can even make it to the office," I muttered. I glanced at my watch as we entered the building, 8:03. At least I wasn't going to get fired. The receptionist waved, sipping her coffee as I flew past her with my client. Cancel all my sessions today," I said hurriedly, not breaking stride. "Send everything to voicemail. I'll deal with it later. I need total privacy." I didn't wait for a response. I was practically dragging him up the stairs to my counseling space. Once at the door, I fumbled with the keypad. several tries before I punched it in correctly. Oh, 4:38, which it was 4:38 on the clocks. So that's interesting. So maybe these are like angel numbers or something to him, but yeah, 4:38. Yeah. So maybe that's his like afterlife number and it's correspond. Yeah, I don't know. 803, 430. Yeah. With the satisfying beep, the door unlocked. I whisked my client through the doorway and instructed him to sit down. I paced between my desk and the wall as he took a seat. I don't know if I was making him nervous or if it was the situation, but he sat on the edge of the chair, legs bouncing. I had a million questions for him, but the one that was burning a hole in my brain came out first. How did you know I could hear it? In the silence before he answered, the static crackled, seeming to grow in intensity every time I got near him. I was sitting in the bus stop by your place. It was real early in the morning. All of a sudden, the buzzing started rattling in my skull. It was so loud, I thought I was going to pass out. I thought I did when everything popped. Popped? Yeah, it was like lightning and thunder all at once. But then it went pitch black, and everything was quiet for a while. When the lights came back on, the sound came with it, but it was different. It was like when you play two keys on a piano that are right next to each other. I stopped pacing, put my head in my hands, and raked my fingers through my hair as I dropped into my office chair, heaving out a shaky sigh. Okay, then what? I asked in a measured tone. He was still my client, and I needed to be strong for both of us now. I couldn't let him know just how shaken I was. I waited till you came out of your place. As soon as I saw you, I got this real bad headache, like somebody put a snare drum in my head and started pounding. It got louder till I got close to you. Once I got hold of you, it just sort of spread out. Didn't quite go away, but quiet enough for me to actually think. Thinking back on it now, I jumped both out of fear and because of the sharp crack that invaded my ears as he approached. Okay, I jumped both out of fear and because of the sharp crack that invaded my ears as he approached. Whatever was happening, to us got stronger the closer we were to each other. That's how he knew. You mentioned blacking out earlier. Are your visions attached to these events? If they are, I don't remember them. I could feel myself deflate at this. Sometimes it seems like the world gets a little foggy. I see sparks in the corner of my eyes. It gets really bad at night when I'm alone. I haven't had any visions his voice hitched a bit. Well, since I died. A raw silence hung in the air. Yeah, I think it. I mean, here's the thing. I think that part of why he doesn't want to just lose all pretense of it being a therapy session is because he is like, if that happens, I might lose my job. I might then I'm totally off the deep end and this is crazy. But in my opinion, the dude already showed up at your house, like all this stuff. I'm like, you're well past that at the point, but I feel like the only reason he's doing that is for his own sanity. So yeah, I agree with you, rude dude. I'm like, I would not be still, I would not be like, I have to be a professional therapist. I would not be worrying about my professionalism anymore at this point. But I understand that, like, for the character's own sanity, he's holding on to it, as a whatever, as like an anchor, or as his way of steering through this storm of sound and craziness. The raw silence hung in the air. I let out a sigh before continuing. Do you have any emotions attached to the blackouts? Do you have any pain? Yeah. Well, and that's what they teach therapists or whatever. It's like you need to have that. You need to keep that professionalism. It protects the therapist as well as the patient, but yeah, at this point, I agree. It's like, bruh, at a certain point, you just gotta be. If I was the therapist, I'd be like, bro, what the fuck is going on? I'd be dropping some F bombs, and I'd be like, you know, where exactly did you die? Tell me everything, because this guy died and like came back to life apparently. Um, do you have any pain? He shook his head. It makes me anxious. The blackouts are so much worse than seeing or hearing shit, he said shakily. I blink and I'm somewhere else. One time I was listening to music, just trying to drown out the damn buzzing. Next thing I know, I'm on the bus. No phone, no earbuds, no music, just a headache and that freaking sound. He looked at me for a moment, his desperate bloodshot eyes searching for an answer in mine. He put his head in his hands. I let the moment breathe before I realized he was sobbing. I pushed myself out of the chair, closing the distance between us. As I reached out to touch him on the shoulder, everything went dead silent. No static, no cars, not even soft music from the lobby. It made me stop in my tracks, with my hand inches from my client. So he reached out to him, and it like got quiet. It felt like time was stretched for a moment before hurtling forward. My stomach jolted into my throat as the taste of iron flooded my mouth. My sight seemed to fracture like glass. The hand I had stretched toward my client in a moment of comfort now grasped him for balance. When my hand made contact, he looked up at me and said, "I don't think that's a good idea." A terrible wave of sonic harmonies filled my head, dissonant and deafening. I put my hands to my ears and my knees buckled. My client deflated into his chair, clutching his ears. The overhead lights brightened and I clamped my eyes shut. It wasn't enough, and the brightening lights seared into my eyelids, capillaries branching across my vision. Then everything popped. The screeching in my ears diminished to a soft hum. Yeah, for sure. For sure, Professor Creepin. The screeching in my ears diminished to a soft hum. I opened my eyes. Broken glass was everywhere. The live wires in the overhead light crackled and arced as I noticed my now glassless window. Oh shit, so... Broken glass everywhere. The live headlight crackled and arced as I noticed my now glassless window. My client wasn't moving, covered in shards of fluorescent light bulb. As I rushed to him, blood oozed out of his eyes, ears, and nose. I pressed my ear against his chest, listening for heartbeat or breath sounds, but I couldn't tell over the pounding in my head. The hair on my forehead swayed in In a slight breeze, I waited a moment, holding my breath. It happened again. He was breathing. Murmurs filled the hallway, and I rushed to my desk phone. It was dead, no dial tone. I was gonna say, you're clearly fucking with the electronics around you, so I'm like, you better just not be near this guy for a while if you don't want that to happen again. Murmurs filled the hallway as I rushed to my desk phone. It was dead, no dial tone. Hey, is everyone okay? We had a power surge. I felt panic rising in my chest as I realized this incident wasn't isolated. Call an ambulance, I shouted, opening the door. I don't know what happened. He had a seizure. I think he's bleeding. He needs a hospital. My mind was racing as I thought up a frantic excuse for why I had an unconscious, bloody client in my chair. That's pretty funny. Well, shit's clearly heating up, and I do think, if I'm being honest, for where I think this main character has to go, I do think you need like a second opinion, whether that's another therapist or whether you just go to the hospital and you both get checked out. I think, yeah, I think that the story, if you want it to live in the realm of reality where it's still plausible, it's like at this point, you know, your client was in your office, this electrical, they clearly have some sort of electrical connection or whatever where, you know, some shit's happening, and when they touch or get close, these pops can happen, and they explained how the pop happened before too when they were close to each other. And so I think now it's time to just bring in other parties and figure out what's going on, whether that is you just getting seen by a doctor on your own and then him going to the ER, or whether you both go to the ER. I don't know if that is what's going to be best for like the horror of the story, but I don't see how this lives in the realm of reality and you being a medical professional and the next part not being in a hospital. But yeah, I mean, I think again, you have this interesting concept where the client, the patient was dead for a while, and now he's having these visions, and here, I want to kind of go back to part one, not really to read it, but just to remember like how the patient described his situation. This might sound a little weird. I know the afterlife isn't what we think it is, but there is an afterlife, I asked, probing him to explain. You can probably tell I haven't led the best of lives. I mean, look how I got here. Smashed my car into a pole because I got hammered at 2 p.m. At this, he averted his gaze, looking down at the floor. He took a moment before telling me I'd figured that I probably belonged in hell, but that's just it. I didn't really go anywhere. No hell, nothing. So what did you experience? I asked, feeling my professionality slip a bit, as my fascination grew. It's not so much what I experienced, it's that I have an understanding that I didn't before. He again turned his gaze to the floor and remained silent. I leaned forward in my chair. Can be life-altering, an inflection point that separates life into before and after for victims. I'm not a victim, he said, cutting me off. I noticed the gruffness in his voice that I hadn't clocked before. I wasn't punished, he said, making direct eye contact. He continued, I was given a gift. No one saved me. Whoever it was that dragged me away from the power line ran off when I came to. So yeah, that's the other thing. He was dragged away from the power line. Oh yeah, Pitiful Scream. Uh, yeah, for sure, man. No, it was awesome. I loved reading your story. I hope the fact that it's pinned at the top of the Creepcast subreddit, I hope Isaiah and the boys read it, you know. I hope they I hope it makes it onto an episode one day. But if not, it's still a great fucking story. You should be proud. Um, Simple, like I said when I covered it, just simple and such a good take, like how you said it's your take on a classic creepypasta, and I thought you did a great job. Like, you didn't make it too complicated, you didn't make it is a very simple premise that just was creepy and delivered on the horror. So I think you should be super proud. Both your stories banged thus far. So both of that I've read. I'm sure you might have more, but the two that I've read. Sorry, I just want to get to the end of this. I was given a gift. No one saved me. Whoever it was that dragged me away from the power line ran off when I came to. Whoever helped him ended up by calling the paramedics. Oh, so that was what confused me, I remember. Yeah, there's this line in there where it's like, it's still part of the quote, but it's whoever helped him ended up calling the paramedics after they couldn't find a pulse. I remember I must have scared the first guy pretty bad, judging by the sounds he was making as he took off. He chuckled. You seem to be taking it in stride, I said. What do you think has helped you? Yeah, because he's listening to the recording, but the story does need an edit in this first part because it's not clear. Um, you need an end to the quote here, and then you need another beginning quote here, something like that. But so, anyways, yeah, this dude had this near death experience. He was apparently dragged away from the power line, so he has some sort of electrical, like, I don't know, superpower almost, or illness, where it's something to do with how he was brought back and the power lines and the electricity. People can live with pain, torment. Humanity is capable of many things, but it's the ability to adapt is what made it so successful. And you've adapted, I asked. I noticed that the voice garbled like a radio station. Quite pick it up. There are folks whose bodies are only there to hold up their heads, he said, his voice cutting quite clearly through the static. A sack of meat that only provides fuel for the brain sits inside, locked in. They can't speak, can't move, but are still capable of thinking and creating, still able to live. That could have been me, he concluded, but it wasn't. Your gift, I asked, the static almost completely drowned out. I even tried connecting my earbuds, but that did nothing to quell the crackling. My gift, he said with a smirk. Again, his voice came clearly through the static, fading as if waiting, only returning when he had finished his sentence. Death is like a cascade, a landslide, filling the holes that is left behind. Anyways, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get a sense for this first part again and everything that the guy said about like his accident and stuff. Oh, rude dude, you're too kind. Thank you, sir. So anyways, it's like I appreciate it, guys. We're gonna read Professor Creepin's story next, so we're gonna get into that here. But I just kind of want to sum up where we're at with this story because it seems like there are gonna be more parts. It's like it's like this guy, I don't know, he's experiencing some sort of, like, whatever you could call it, some sort of like afterlife that's invading his alive life. It's like it's, some sort of, where he's having visions and he's hearing this noise and he statically is charged. The electricity seems to be whatever shocking things around him, and it seems to be interfering with others around him. And now that he's told his therapist about it, it seems to be affecting him as well. And it seems like this, it does seem like to me that the patient is the focal point, and unless the therapist was somehow the guy that saved him or dragged him away or brought him back, like maybe that's what we're going to find out, is the therapist was actually there and just doesn't remember. But unless that's the case, this guy is like the focal point. So I do believe that the mystery is surrounding this guy, the patient, not the therapist. But I also think something weird could be happening too, where we figure out that, like, well, the therapist and the guy are actually one and the same. He's having like a Tyler Durden situation or something. I do think we could have some sort of crazy shit like that where, it was just all in his head, which wouldn't be like a great ending. I'm not saying I want the story to go there. I'm just thinking that right now the similarities are too weird, and it's too weird that, like, they're both hearing the noise, and I don't know, just all the stuff. But anyways, it left it a fun place. The guy ended up seizing in his room, and it seems like this electricity, this static interference that they're both giving off, it seems like it's related to when they come together, but also when they, like, their emotions have something to do with it too. So I think they need to be really careful and maybe even experiment with this and figure out how they can control it or get it to work in their favor, so they can figure out what the fuck is going on. They can figure out what the hell is happening to them. Sense of the visual world, it was like a kaleidoscope was swirling under my eyelids before everything fell in on itself. Okay. Laps around me, and I could hear every single memory I'd ever formed being played at once. They were being pulled from my soul, weaving themselves into a light snow in front of me, combining with a fog of pulsing colors and forming a ring of crackling smoke. I was no longer in control. Yeah, it seems to be this part in particular that kind of, like, I caught myself mouthing the words he had spoken. I clapped my hands over my lips. Why did I do that? This was my first time listening to this recording. It's not like I remember our conversation word for word, yet I had been reciting my client's memories like they were words to a song I couldn't get out of my head. So this is why I'm kind of thinking that they could somehow be the same person. I need to go through this ring, and this is the ring that he talks about that's like the portal. The word no screamed in my ears, and my whole body burned with more pain and then I was back. Yeah, and then that's when he comes back out of his glimpse into the afterlife. So really cool. We don't have any answers yet, but I mean, very, very interesting, and interesting that, yeah, such a nice paragraph. I agree. I thought it was very cool of this for this author. This is their first story, and I think it's very cool to have this whole idea of like afterlife being. I use the word synesthesia. That's not the writer's word, but the afterlife being this sort of synesthesia of feelings. So synesthesia is like hearing colors or feeling sounds, stuff like that. And it seems like that's this ethereal afterlife thing of where he sees, he hears or he sees the memories all like a static in front of him. And that is ultimately what I think this static is. I don't think it's electrical static, but I think it's also whatever, hopes, dreams, fears. I think it's everything. I think it's like what if human emotion all of the sudden was an electrical signal as well as a charge or whatever. So I th- I think that's kind of what the writer is like getting across here, and I think that is what we're witnessing, like with the therapist and in the uh when they go to the second therapy session and when they're talking, is we're seeing these repercussions of this happening where like emotion is essentially this other force as well. It's like gravity too or something. Very Twin Peaks lore-ish. Yeah, electricity. Yeah. It's emotion is electricity in this story, or memory is electricity, all those things, which is a very cool, fun concept. I've watched some of Twin Peaks. I just started it recently. I think I'm maybe on the second episode, but I've always wanted to watch it, and I just never have, like, I just barely started it maybe like a few weeks ago, and so I will try to watch through at least the whole first season at some point, but I was enjoying it thus far. It was a cool, beautiful show, beautifully shot old show. I definitely like it. Be cool, but I write these stories for myself mostly. I'm super proud. Happy others have enjoyed them. Writing a follow-up to 1,000 Morning People as we speak. Hell yeah, dude. Well, that's awesome. That's who you should write for. Write for yourself, write for yourself. And once you post it or publish it or do whatever you're gonna do, then everything else that happens is just gravy. If you write to win awards or get a lot of upvotes, it'll feel good if it happens. I'm not gonna say that it wouldn't feel good, but ultimately, the real value is just in creating something that will always be the the best reward is the thing in it of itself. It's not the awards, it's not the compliments or comments that people post on it. It is the story in it of itself is the gift. That is the thing that we all can look forward to. All right, so the tragedy of the woods is what it's called. So now we're gonna move on to Professor Creepins. Let's see. It looks like it's on regular Creepcast. So I'll have to go in and see if I can edit the description after the fact, Professor Creepin, just to put your story in the description. but I'll do that, like I said, after the fact, because of the woods. 8 upvotes. Story 15 days ago. Not bad, right? This is the right one, right? Here, I'll click on it just to be sure. Okay, no boat. Perfect. Dope. Alright, so this is, Professor Creepin. This is your story. We're gonna get into it. It is always a little different having the author here. It's cool. I love that you're here live and can that's awesome. I love it. It's just, yeah, I don't even know what I was gonna say. It doesn't fucking matter. I'm happy you're here, and I look forward to reading your story, I guess, is just what I wanted to put out there. Oh, and if anyone's watching this VOD later and there's a story that you want me to read, especially if it's your story, message me on Reddit. Shit, sorry. Oh my god, so annoying. Not you guys, me. The fact that I'm bad at the internet and bad at this stuff. I just want to show my fucking Reddit profile so that people can see where to message me, but I guess I can't do that, so whatever. I just am trying to show this little section right over here. There we go. Fucking A. I'm Mask of the Red Death on Reddit. I'm also RedDeathMask, spelled READ, on Reddit. You can send me links to stories on Reddit. You can message me on Twitter. On Instagram, I'm RedDeathMask on Instagram, spelled the normal way. But yeah, get your story to me, and because I would like to have a queue of stories to cover for all my live streams. I don't just want to I don't just want to troll through the Creepcast subreddit the night before and then hope those people message me back in time to be able to read the story. I want to I want to have a list of stories to choose from people that want me to read their stories, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, authors always welcome. Absolutely. Oh, yeah, rude dude. Yeah. Oh, you haven't read. Can I send you a link on Discord? Absolutely. That's why I read Pitiful Scream's second story. Was he messaged me and was like, "Hey, if you want to cover it, do it." And yeah, rude dude, I assumed that you had another story or at least more stories, and I've wanted to read it. I am hopefully in the future, I think we can do a story, or I'm hoping maybe with that story that you're messaging me about right now, if you want, maybe we could read it together. Although I understand if you don't want to read it yourself because it's your story, so I kind of get that. So, but I really do want to do I want to do this where I get to actually talk with someone and riff with them and bounce ideas off of, and that might be hard to do with the writer that wrote the story. But my point is, I never wanted to be a solo streamer. Let me just, yeah. So I wanted to give it a while before you read another one of mine. Yeah, no, for sure. I feel that, and I've tried to do that too, where I'm trying to mix it up. The only, and the reason I'm reading Professor Creepin's right now, or about to start reading it, is because I've never read one of his stories. I mean, I've watched some of his YouTube videos, but I've never read it. So that's why we're getting into his now. But yeah, we'll find a time when it's good. But, and like Professor Creepin mentioned, reading a story with someone is so much more fun. And so I do want to do that, where we all do it, where we get on a Discord call and read it together. And so, yeah, I want to do that. But what I was going to say, sorry, before I got distracted, was I never wanted to be even a streamer, really. I never wanted to be a solo streamer in particular. I always wanted, when it comes to creating content, I wanted to be a podcast. I wanted to do a podcast. I wanted to, maybe make YouTube content, but I never liked doing it by myself. Like I've tried to start several podcasts with a fellow co-host. I did one with my brother. It was kind of like a COVID podcast. We started it before COVID, and that was really fun. It was a comedy podcast. We just kind of joked around. It was just two brothers, and it was super fun, and I loved doing it. It was one of the most creatively fulfilling things I've ever done in my life. Cool, yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, okay, I see what's going on now. I'm working on another story. I'll try to get it to you and try hopping on a call to stream about it. Yeah, that would be great. And that's another thing too, is like, so one thing I've wanted to do with my live streams is want to co-host for Creepin'. Okay, well, yeah. Well, here's the thing, man, is that like I certainly would would love to do that, or would love to collaborate in some way. But I also that was one of the issues with like having a podcast with my brother and just with people, is that I've had a lot of struggles with it too, because it gets very hard when you're more dedicated than this other person is, or I've just it's a labor of love, and I've had a lot of struggles with it too, to where I was like, fuck it, you know what? I love Creepcast and I love stories and writing, so I'm just gonna do my own live stream where I read stories and just see how that goes. And as of right now, it's going pretty good. I have you guys in the chat. All I ever wanted was some people in the chat to bounce ideas off of. And every time I streamed on Twitch, it just always seemed like I never really got anyone in there. So I finally switched to YouTube, and so far it's been going pretty good, and I'm really, really fucking stoked. But jump on a call and read stories live, but my nerves would absolutely not handle it. I'm like Hunter. I can't read in front of a class like that. I feel you guys. I feel you. So yeah, let me do the voice acting. Bro, I'll read whatever and do whatever. I'm pretty low stakes. LOL. Yeah. And I feel that way too. So yeah, we'll have to do it. We're gonna read your story now, but let's all talk on Discord. Maybe we should start a little a little group chat on Discord. if we can do that, and we should all, you know, figure out what we want to do, because it sounds like a blast, and I would love it. I would love to get multiple people on to read stories. Like maybe we could find stories with multiple characters and kind of go from there and have a blast. But anyways, all right, this is gonna sound weird, but I love you guys. Thank you for tuning into the stream, because it's very cool to have people that have the same interests, you know. So anyways, none of that gay shit. Back to the story, okay? This is about horror. No, I'm kidding. The Tragedy of the Woods by Noboat 9770. I never really thought that this summer would go the way it did. Guys, you support anyone? Yeah, fuck yeah, hell yeah. Love you too, brother. No homo. Hell yeah. I never really thought that this summer would go the way it did. I guess no one really sees tragedy coming before it strikes. My brother had always been a strange boy. He was around 3 years younger than me, but he was always the quieter one, even as an infant. My mother would laugh and tell stories about how he never cried as a child, just stared blankly. I didn't know everything though. My parents kept secrets about Jeff from me. For instance, when he was younger, he killed the neighborhood pet. He said he was just playing with it, and somehow its neck snapped. Okay, so creeping, before I get into the story more, is this a Jeff the Killer prequel, spin-off, whatever you want to call it? Because already in the first paragraph we're getting the name Jeff, and we're getting that he seems to be a serial killer in the making, at least by killing the animals. Or is it just a coincidence of name? Because yeah, we might have to get sidetracked if that's the case. Oh, it's a remake, dude. See, okay, it was you, bro. I remember when you posted, you were like, I'm thinking of doing a Jeff the Killer like prequel or remake, and oh, that's so funny. Okay, so here, hold on, we're gonna read your story. We're not gonna get completely sidetracked, but I have to show you guys something. How do I fucking it? It should be this profile. So I wrote, oh shit, that's the comment. Okay. So I wrote, and I don't like to promote my own stories. I don't plan on reading this on stream. I wrote a Jeff the Killer. It was for Deep Night Society did a classic creepypasta contest, and I wrote Jeff the Killer, the Ballad of Lou, which I just loved that name. I loved that title. And so I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna write a sequel. And I knew that there were already sequels to Jeff the Killer. I've never read them. I should watch your video on it, Creepin'. I'm sure you've made one. Okay, so yeah, read this in your own time if you want to. It's pretty long. I didn't plan on making, not formatted very well. Like I was planning on taking a lot more time, but the contest was ending. It was ending at the end of the month. It was March, right? And it had only like, or it had, I think, 24 hours before it had to be posted to qualify. And I wanted it to qualify because it didn't make sense for me not to put it in, because it's meant to be a classic creepypasta. And so I had to kind of format it quickly at the end, and it got kind of weird, and I don't even know why this part ended up being like this. I don't know, it's fucking weird. But so anyways, I wrote this is my one story that I've posted on the internet to date, and it's Jeff the Killer, The Ballad of Lou. It's supposed to be a classic creepypasta. It's supposed to be, I don't know if funny is the right word, but it's supposed to have some classic creepypasta elements in it. There's one part where where the character Lou, the main character, goes into deep detail about eating Taco Bell. And the reason I did that is because I was like, these stories always have like something where they're giving way too much detail about something that isn't that important to the story. And I thought it was a really funny idea to have a character be like super intense about the Taco Bell that he's having. And it also, I think, makes sense in the context of the story. But yeah, so you and me, Creepin', we already have a kinship because we both have written Jeff the Killer remakes, spin-offs, whatever you want to call them. So that's pretty cool. I did not know that was what your story was about, and now you know what my story's about. Mine is a sequel. It's meant to be just a straight up sequel to the original story. But it's all from Lou's perspective, because I feel like Lou got done dirty in the Jeff the Killer story, and it sounds like yours is from Lou's perspective as well. Although I thought Lou was the younger brother, so I don't know. Anyways, doesn't matter. Interesting, cool. I'm excited to read your story, and now that I have some idea of what it's about, I'm even more excited. But I had to, before I really got into your story, I had to point out the connection with mine. I just think that's funny as hell. Funny as hell. Two Creepcast fans, orbiters, whatever you want to call us. Because in my opinion, I mean, Creepcast would have been a great podcast regardless, but in my opinion, the Jeff the Killer episode is what made Creepcast what it is today. I think it took the podcast in a comedic direction that I don't think it otherwise. It probably would have gotten there on its own eventually, but I think that story is so funny and so, like, corny in a beautiful way that it just let people know that we're just beginning to listen to the podcast, that, like, these aren't gonna all be serious stories that just make you hate your life and sad and horrified. This podcast is gonna be really fun too. And after the Jeff the Killer episode, I was like, I have to listen to every episode these guys post, you know? That's how I felt. Yes, it is. And by Lou, it is by Lou, but he's older in my version. Right, which honestly makes sense anyways. I feel like that's a good change to make from the original canon story, because it never made that much sense that, like, the cops were like, Lou, you're going to jail because your older brother, you know. I know that Lou takes the blame, but that never made sense, you know. That never made sense in the original story, so that seems fair. I like that change. kept secrets about Jeff from me. For instance, when he was younger, he killed a neighborhood pet. He said he was just playing with it, and somehow its neck snapped. The veterinarian said differently. The animal was bruised and bloody too much for harmless playing. I feel like that sentence, I don't know. I think there's a way you could have phrased that differently. Not that it's bad, but like the veterinarian said differently. The animal was like, you could say like it could have been like the animal's wounds, the animal's wounds were clearly not accidental. But again, I don't think it's wrong the way you phrased it. It's just the veterinarian said differently. The animal was bruised and bloody too much for harmless playing. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. It's not that I like it. I just feel like maybe this is a point to maybe add another little. Yeah, bro, don't even fret, because my grammar, and I don't know, I'm better sometimes when I write, but there's plenty of times when my shit's fucked up too, so don't feel bad about it at all. I'm just kind of saying, like, because right here you say that the neck is snapped, which already that doesn't seem like a thing that could happen accidentally if you're just playing with an animal. But I feel like this is an opportunity in your story to put, like, to show that he was clearly torturing the pet, or something like the animal was bruised and bloody. I don't know exactly what but you could use this to paint a picture to really horrify your reader, like the animal was clearly strangled, its eyes were bulging out of its skull or something like that, you know what I mean? But just a thought, just an idea. And yeah, as I read this story, because I too have written a story about like Jeff the Killer and whatever, odds are I'm gonna have maybe even more notes or more ideas than I normally would when going through a story. And yeah, that's just because, kind of like I said, I've written something in this vein as well. So, but don't take anything I say to, like, it's never to be, it's never to be harsh, or it's never in. I never mean it to be anything other than constructive, let's say. So yeah, anyways. We moved 3 months after that. We figured we could leave behind the bad memories there, and maybe that would help Jeffrey cope with whatever mental issues he was going through. My mom took him out of school, and she retired early to become his teacher. It seemed like things changed for the better after that. We were wrong, though. Deep down, whatever was wrong with him would never go away. I brought my girlfriend home that summer break. We both went to the same college about an hour outside of where my family lived. We lived with her aunt after her parents died. She lived with her aunt after her parents died in an accident years ago. She didn't ask her aunt to stay with me, and her aunt didn't care. They didn't get along. Her aunt saw her as a burden. she didn't like the way Jane dressed. Didn't like her piercings or the makeup she wore. So needless to say, Jane was happy to come with me for the summer. My parents were happy as well. I had been dating Jane since freshman year of college, and now, as a junior, it felt like a good time for them to meet. The first day went well. Dad held a cookout in the backyard and invited some of the neighbors over. The welcome back party was nice, and my parents seemed to love Jane. Most people judged her based on the way she looked, but my parents saw past that. They saw what I saw in her. I remember Dad squeezing my shoulder as my mother talked about some book. "You found a good one," he said softly while standing over the grill. See, I like this from an emotional standpoint because in the original Jeff the Killer story, the parents are just so insane and don't seem to care about the children. Now, there is another version of the Jeff the Killer story that is maybe considered. I think I might have watched some of, or I don't know what it was, but I think I listened to a reading of it where it's this much longer one, and it's about a journalist who meets up with Jeff, and Jeff tells the story of what happened. But in that story, he goes into more detail about how our parents didn't care about us, me or Lou. All they cared about was seeming like good parents, and they didn't care to actually be good to us. And I thought that was an interesting place to take the story, because it made a lot more sense why Jeff would want to kill his parents. And I think in that version, he doesn't end up killing or hurting Lou, or maybe he does. I don't know, because I don't remember how it ended. But I like that your story is going to this other place of the parents actually are supportive. The fact that they like his girlfriend and are interested in, Lou's whatever being happy. That's a nice touch. I like that choice, that thematic choice, because one of the things that sucked about the original Jeff the Killer story, or that made it so funny, is just his parents are just these horrible, shallow people. So it's you don't care when he kills them. You know what I mean? Oh, message retracted. Okay. Well, I don't know what you said, Professor Creepin, but yeah. Okay. I guess it doesn't matter. "You found a good one," he said softly while standing over the grill. I thanked him and smiled, but as I did, I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It felt like someone was watching me. I looked around the party, which, despite the large invite, only held a handful of people, but found no one staring. Then I looked back up at that house. There he was. IDK what I said either. Then I looked back up at the house. There he was. Jeffrey was standing in the upstairs window looking down. He was always the palest member of the family. Oh, I see. I see. Okay. There he was. Jeffrey was standing in the upstairs window looking down. He was always the palest member of the family. With the smudges in the window, he almost looked like a ghost standing there. I shielded my eyes and gave him an approving smile, but he gave no indication he saw me. Instead, his eyes shifted from me over to Jane. I watched as she got the same feeling I had, the feeling of being watched. She also darted around, but she never looked up to see Jeffrey. "How is he doing?" My dad paused momentarily before adjusting another hot dog on the grill. He didn't have to ask who I was talking about. He already knew. I thought he was doing better, but these last few months have been different. He barely comes out of his room. Your mom has started to teach him there now. She says he has regressed on his lessons. His insomnia has also only gotten worse. I woke up the other night and found him standing in our doorway, motionless. Medication isn't helping anymore? We took him to a specialist last month who prescribed something new, but I don't think it's working either. Has your mother worried sick? I cocked an eyebrow before taking a sip of my drink. No one had mentioned a specialist to me. My parents told me no one had mentioned a specialist to me. My parents told me everything, or so I had thought at the time. I looked back up at the window and Jeffrey was gone. I always felt bad for my younger brother, but he was in a loving home and I always thought things would get better. My parents had tried everything, multiple therapists, mental health experts, sleep trials, and even one or two so-called natural remedy gurus. Nothing worked ever. Since my brother was 5 years old, he was almost allergic to sleep. He just couldn't sleep. On a good day, he'd get maybe 3 hours. Most nights he would just sit in his bed, motionless, eyes open. My parents tried asking him about it, but he always said he never felt tired. When I was younger, I tried staying up to watch what he did. I remember creeping over to his bed and looking down at him. The second I did, his eyes opened and he stared back at me. It freaked me out and I ran back to my bed. I also struggled to sleep that night. It freaked me out and I ran back to my bed. I don't think you need I also here. Again, like I get it that it's like, well, you're like, and so I wasn't able to sleep. Like I get it that you're saying that Jeff not being able to sleep and looking so creepy also made you unable to sleep, but I think there's a way to phrase, like, it freaked me out, so I ran back to bed. You could say something like, and so sleep, you know, and so sleep, struggled to find us both that night. You could just say something like that, and so sleep struggled to find us both that night. There was something in his eyes, or, something like that. I don't know. And again, it's not, I just think it might sound a little punchier, just an idea. After the party, we all helped clean. Shockingly, even Jeffrey came downstairs to help my father close down the grill and put the utensils away. Once cleaning was done, we all sat in the living room talking. My mom pulled out her favorite board game and we all grabbed chairs ready to play. All of us, except for Jeff, of course. He sat on a chair at the kitchen island, the lamp above him painting his pale skin even whiter. I kept sneaking I guess Jeff doesn't want to play, but that's also just sad, or maybe it's just to illustrate how creepy he is in general, but it's like, so Jeff just doesn't want to play, or does the family not want him to play? I don't, like maybe there should be a line here about like, and we grabbed chairs, all of us except Jeff, of course. I don't think they're purposefully excluding Jeff, but I think maybe a line here about like you being like, come on, Jeff, play with us, or Lou being like, come on, Jeff, play with us, the narrator, and then Lou says something, or then Jeff says something like, I just like to watch, or, something creepy like that. I think there could be a moment there for the story. I kept sneaking glances at him while we played. He was a good person deep down, at least I thought as much at the time. Sometimes he freaked out or did weird stuff, but I still loved him. And then maybe here you could say, like, it wasn't good for Jeff to play games. He always got too competitive, or something. Anyways, just another suggestion. I decided I had to try and talk to him about whatever was going on with him. I purposefully lost quickly and excused myself to sit down next to him. His gaze did not change as I sat down next to him. And that part right there, the repeating of next to him just sounds a little clunky. I purposely lost quickly and excused myself to sit down next to him, and then just be like, his gaze never wandered from whatever. Because here's the thing is, you've said that he's staring, but you could say what he's staring at here. You could just say, I quickly lost and excused myself to sit down next to him. His gaze never changed from, is he staring at Jane? Maybe he's still staring at Jane. So like that could be an opportunity to put, his gaze did not change, did not shift from Jane, or something like that. How have you been, Jeff? I asked quietly, so as to not make a big deal out of us talking and draw my mother's attention. He remained silent, his gaze transfixed on something across the room. Okay, here we're getting the info. So yeah, maybe I'm being a little impatient too, so don't worry. Like, I think the story is going to reveal this stuff, but maybe I'm just being, again. Okay, cool. Yeah, good. I was gonna say a lot of this stuff is just stuff that you would naturally clean, you would naturally do on a second version anyways. So cool. Hell yeah. He remained silent, his gaze transfixed on something across the room. I repeated myself again, but he still didn't answer. I reached my hand over to put a hand on his shoulder. Then I stopped midway through. It finally connected to me who he... Okay. This is where you would put, it finally clicked for me who he was looking at. Yeah, I would say clicked. It finally clicked for me who he was looking at. He was looking at Jane. His gaze was so focused on her, he probably wasn't even registering my words. What's her name? He spoke for the first time, his voice coming out in a low, raspy tone as if he was forcing the sound out of his mouth. I sat there unresponsive for a few moments before opening my mouth. Jane. Her name is Jane. I hadn't heard his voice in so long. It sounded alien, so inhuman. So it said low, right? His voice was a low, raspy tone, so. I like Jane. Thanks, she's pretty cool. Hopefully you'll get a chance to talk to her this summer. He didn't respond. Instead, he slipped off his chair and walked away. Climbing up the stairs, the light in the hallway basked him in such an eerie glow, his shadow slinking into the darkness of the staircase. He looked at Jane with what I could only now describe as hunger. almost like a predator staring at prey. Why did he look that way at Jane? This was my brother. I wanted to tear up those stairs and question him. Why had he become this husk? I ignored these thoughts and walked back over to my living room to play some more games with my family. I slid closer to Jane and put my arm around her. Her shoulders. Put my arm around her shoulders, squeezing her. You okay? Sorry, I'll get a better voice for Jane. You okay? Jane's smile faltered for a moment. She could see the concern in my eyes. I'm fine, I feigned a smile. Well, I hope so. Time for round 2? My father handed me the dice and I began to play another round. My thoughts clouded. After we played 2 more rounds, we called it a night. I was sleeping in the guest bedroom upstairs with Jane, something I was kind of shocked my parents let me do. Perks of being a grown adult, I guess. I was tired from a long day of driving and probably didn't smell too great. I decided to take a shower before I went to bed. I stepped into the guest bathroom and flicked the lights on, momentarily blinding myself. My father must have changed the bulbs recently. Why were they so bright? My eyes adjusted as I stepped into the shower and began washing myself. A few moments later, I was washing the shampoo out of my hair when I turned to see a figure outside the glass. I admit, my heartbeat became so loud I could hear it pounding in my ears. I slowly reached for the closest object that resembled a weapon. In this case, a bottle of body wash. The figure came closer to the glass before sliding open the door. I tensed. Can I join you? I tensed, ready to swing. Can I join you? Jane said with a wry smile. Oh, hell yeah, we're getting a shower. Some shower loving scene. Hell yeah. Shit's getting steaming in here. And you know the creepy part about this is they're gonna like get out of the shower after they're done bumping uglies, and like Jeff's gonna be like there. He's gonna be right outside the door or something creepy like that. And he's gonna have the perfect excuse or something like that, but they're gonna know that Jeff was being a little creeper. My heart slowed and I put the bottle down, flashing her a cheeky grin. Come on in. My beautiful and very naked girlfriend. I love that line. I love it. First of all, the story's good for like a lot of reasons thus far, but I love that Lou is just like an older, normal brother who's like, well, my girlfriend wants to get in the shower with me. I'm not going to say no, even though I think my little brother wants to kill her. But at this point, you know, we can't blame Lou because, like, Lou's just a college guy. He's at home, you know. And we know that Lou, at this point in the story, he's not assuming the worst yet like we are. We know what's coming. We have some idea. Lou, however, does not have the benefit of understanding that he exists within the confines of a creepypasta or a horror story. So, but I like this because this is such a common, when you're doing a story like this, it's such a common horror trope to have like the cheerleader football captain couple, and have it like the first, in the first 10 minutes of the movie, they're like starting to get it on in some way or another. at the camp or at the lake, wherever they are. And that's such a common horror trope that I love that we get a version of it in this story. I think that's super fun. I'm here for it. My beautiful and very naked girlfriend entered the shower as my heart finally returned to normal. She put her hands around my shoulders and looked at me. What happened next I shall refrain from describing because it bears no meaning to the story. What matters is what happened when we finally came up for air. There is someone outside the glass. The words tore into me like a dagger. I almost didn't want to look, didn't want to confirm the words Jane had whispered into my ear. My head turned for what felt like hours. Each moment my heartbeat grew louder and louder. I saw what she had seen out of the corner of my eye first. A dark figure stood beyond the glass, obscured by moisture and steam, except for one singular hand pressed against the door. Meaning the glass door of the shower or the door of the bathroom? Because I want to paint a picture in my head, but I think some clarification with what door, like the bathroom door or pressed against the door. I shielded Jane before reaching for the same bottle. I tensed up, steeling myself for a fight. I slid the door open quickly and charged out. The bottle raced high above my head, my heart pounding. Oh, there was no one there. Interesting. I stood there, water dripping down my legs in the empty bathroom. I wasn't imagining things. I knew someone had been there. Even Jane had seen whatever it was. I put the shampoo down on the bathroom sink before lifting up a dusty plunger. I gripped the wooden handle and kicked open the bathroom door, entering the bedroom. The room was also empty, but the door was wide open. I stood there, creating a puddle on the floor. As I peered around the room, in my mind, I knew who it was even then. I walked back to the bedroom, finding my girlfriend now out of the shower wearing a towel. Yeah, an interesting spin on a typical shower scene. I agree, Rude Dude, and I like it, and I think it had just the right amount of cheekiness, in terms of like what happened next. I won't describe. It only mattered what happened when we came up for air. Like, it was perfect. It was tasteful, I'll say. It was tasteful for a creepypasta. It wasn't like overly gratuitous in terms of the sex, or anything like that. It was very good. And like in a movie, obviously you'd have some steamy moments where they're like making out, and like, you with the cinematography, they could do something interesting where the girl like puts her hand on the thing and then she like wipes the steam away, and then that's when she sees all of a sudden, and like through the camera lens, like we would see her through it, but then she would shocked and then like start whispering to Lou, and there would be that whole thing. But in the story, like, we don't need that. It's just what happens when we finally came up for air. There's someone outside the glass. I think this is a really cool scene, and I think it works, and it's creepy, and it's horror tropey in the best way at the beginning, and it kind of changes. The only thing that I think maybe would have made it a slightly bit better is like when he grabs the plunger or something, like just something about how Lou, because obviously he's naked, but I would have just appreciated like something where it says like, I slid the door, the bottle raised high above my head, or like when he steps into the room, like something about how he's like I don't know, something about like I was literally naked. But what made me feel even more exposed was the fact that I knew who it was. The fact that I couldn't trust my own brother in my house around my girlfriend. Something like that. Something to where, because he's so exposed, he's in the most vulnerable state, so is his girlfriend, and it's such a violation that Jeff was going in there to creep on them or to peek at them, even though it's something understandable for like little brothers do that. They, their brothers are making out with their girlfriends, they might like watch them or whatever. That's not the most inherently creepy thing ever, but in the context of how creepy Jeff already is and has been, it's very creepy. And so like I think there's room for a line in there. The original idea was that the first scare was gonna be Jeff. Then I was like, nah, seems too obvious. So I added her coming in. Yeah, I think that was a good choice. I think having her come in to join, I think it's really good creeping. I'm enjoying all of this scene. Yeah. Anyways, finding my girlfriend now out of the shower wearing a towel. It was probably just a trick of the shadows. Her voice was shaky, like she was trying to convince herself more than me. You're probably right. The door was open and it's dark in the bedroom. She fell asleep first that night. I couldn't get what happened out of my head. Could it really have been Jeff? I got out of bed, and even in this paragraph here, you could have something like, he's just a young, horny kid. Clearly, he's curious. Like, I hope he wasn't looking at us, or I hope he wasn't watching us. But could I really blame a horny teenager, or just something like that? Even though we know that the character of Lou knows kind of how sick his brother is. It's like, and then you could have a line like, I was still making excuses for him then, still trying to convince myself that he was just a normal kid, something kind of like that. Could it have really been Jeff? I got out of bed, leaving the bedroom and walking out the bedroom door, leaving it open. I walked down the hall and past Jeff's bedroom. I could almost feel his presence behind the door. I stopped in front of it, almost holding my breath. I didn't want to knock. I didn't want to know the truth. I stood there for a few moments before the lights in the bedroom came on. I heard the sound of footsteps coming closer. I prepared to walk away, but the footsteps stopped directly in front of me. He was standing there, on the other side of the door. He knew I was there. I released my breath finally. I had been holding it since the lights came on. Was he really just standing there? I wanted to knock, but my arm felt weighed down. Maybe I should have spoken up, said something, confronted him right there and then. I didn't do that. I shook those thoughts from my mind. It couldn't have been Jeff. What was I thinking? He was just a little troubled and creepy sometimes. I'm sure he wasn't standing there, facing the door. He was probably just checking the calendar behind his door, or fixing a poster, or something along those lines. I looked down and and that's kind of similar to the line that I was saying, where it's like, I'm making excuses for him, but I think this sentiment could also work in the context I was saying about, like, whatever. Yeah, it was creepy if he was watching us, but he he's probably just curious, he's just a horny teenager. And then that whole thing of like, I was trying to convince myself he was a normal kid. I was still making excuses for him. Or something along those lines. I looked down and saw the shadow of his feet underneath the door. He was motionless, unmoving, and facing the door. What the hell was he doing? The shadow underneath the door went away, and I heard Jeff walk away. See, right there, I could think you could just say the shadow underneath the door went away. We already know that implies that Jeff walked away. The lights turned off, and I heard a creak as Jeff sat down on the bed. How was I frightened in my own home by my own brother? Oh, nice. Hell yeah. I walked away in silence back into the guest bedroom. I slid into bed with Jane and slowly but surely drifted off to sleep. Time passed and nothing particularly strange happened. I had forgotten about that night. I had moved on and was enjoying my summer break. Until one day we all decided to go to the beach as a family. Jane was having stressed having not brought any sort of beach wear. Her and my mother decided to go shopping quickly while my father, Jeff, and I all piled into the car. The local beach was pretty active by this time, but we were able to find a spot away from some of the nosy family, sorry. Jane and my mother joined us about 20 minutes later, and we all had a pretty enjoyable time for the first hour. Then Jeff did something that ruined it. Jeff had walked off while we were all chatting, and something told me he was going to get himself into trouble. He never had trouble with bullies or anything. Most of our neighbors knew him, but still, all it took was one mean kid. After what happened that night, I was on edge. I watched him for a few minutes before I got distracted by Jane for a while. When I looked back, he was gone. I knew something was wrong. I just felt so off. I quickly excused myself, saying I would be right back. I walked to the edge of the beach, looking up and down. It was going to be hard spotting someone that pale on a sunny day like this. That's a funny line. You're like, his skin was so pale it blended into the sand, it blended into the white sandy beach or whatever. Like, it's just funny. It's a funny line. I like it. But I knew he was around here somewhere. Then I heard a kid cry out from behind me. I turned around and looked where I'd heard the sound. There was a semi-forested area right near the beach. I remembered it from my childhood. There was a small path where kids would go and pretend to be explorers or build shitty wooden forts. I started along the path, hearing something rustling in the trees ahead of me. I felt the uncanny feeling of being watched. I looked around into the trees as I walked, but didn't see anyone or anything watching me. Suddenly, I came to the clearing and I saw a young boy face down in the grass. I saw blood glistening on the back of his skull and my heart dropped. I ran over to him, rolling him over and recognizing the boy immediately. It was my neighbor's 9-year-old son. I think his name was Randy. I felt for a pulse and found a steady one. My heart began to finally beat steady again. I needed to get this boy some help. I lifted him up, still feeling the overbearing sensation of being watched, as I charged out of the woods, screaming my head off. Boy's family was found quickly, and an ambulance arrived shortly after. His mother was screaming, and his father was asking me questions. I couldn't give them much information, but I told them when I got there and where I found him. The police also came, and I relayed the same thing to them. An officer followed me along the path, and I pointed out where I had seen him. The officers thanked me and returned to the family. I returned to my own family, and as I did, I finally laid eyes on Jeff. He was skipping rocks on the edge of the beach. As I watched him, he pulled a larger rock out of his swimsuit and chucked it into the water. I remembered the bump on the back of the boy's head. Had Jeff hurt that boy? He suddenly turned around and stared back at me. I saw in his eyes from that distance what I had seen all those years ago in that bed. The boy survived and came out of the hospital at the end of the week. Looking back now with everything that has happened, I know exactly why I felt like I was being watched. He was there, somewhere in those trees, watching, waiting, lurking. The final strange event came a week before everything went to pieces. We were winding down for the night, and I was speaking to Jane in bed. She always liked to talk before sleep. Normally she listened to white noise, but she had left her machine at home, and allegedly her phone wasn't loud enough. I like the use of allegedly here. And allegedly, it's like, I don't really believe her. And also it's like, she just wants an excuse to talk to me, you know? It's this whole like thing of, you know, like women be talking, women be chatting, but it's funny. I like it because it's like, you know, it's not like Lou is mad at her about it, but it's like, you know, allegedly she couldn't use her phone. Really, she could have used her phone, but it's fine, you know? So then your mom was like, excuse me, but what did you just call her? Jane was describing an interaction they had with some Karen in the mall who had made a comment about the way she was dressed. And I kid you not, your mom gave her the middle finger and told her to get her ass out of the store before she did something she was gonna regret. It was nice hearing how protective my mother was over Jane. My mom doesn't play about her family members. Jane's eyes grew wide. Family? It was the first time I had ever referred to her like that. Yeah, family. Jane smiled and held me tighter. I like that. I laughed and kissed her forehead before she spoke up again. Speaking of family, I caught your brother being a skeevy perv again. What now? I caught him staring at me in the kitchen earlier when I was making us popcorn. He was just sitting there, silent. No offense, but he's kind of a creep. I'll talk to him tomorrow. I should have said something to my parents earlier. We spoke for a little longer before we fell asleep. The last thing I remember was discussing the ins and outs of horror movies and how they're superior to comedy movies. I swear the last thing I remember was discussing the ins and outs of and how they're superior to comedy movies. So that's what Jane was saying. Okay. I swear she could have been a lawyer. She was very committed to defending the honor of horror. I woke up in a daze in the middle of the night. The first thing I heard was breathing. I thought it was Jane's at first. My eyes were slowly but surely adjusting to the dark. First thing I heard was breathing. I thought it was Jane's at first. My eyes were slowly but surely adjusting to the dark. Had I left the door open? It was now wide open. When I could have sworn I had closed it before we went to bed. What had woken me up? That breathing? It was rhythmic. But on the opposite side of me, it wasn't Jane. I froze. Someone was behind me, standing over the bed, breathing. No, not someone. It was Jeff. I turned my eyes as far as I could to the side, afraid to move my body. I could see nothing from this angle. I needed to turn over. I needed to face my brother. Jeff? My voice came out quieter than I expected it to. No answer. Jeff, I know you're in here. No answer. Jeff, why are you watching us? I just wanted to help. His voice had grown more broken since the last time I heard him speak. It was raspy, but filled with roughness. His throat sounded terribly dry, but still wet at the same instant. Phlegm filled his words, but did not make them sound smooth, only damp. I finally turned and saw him. He was standing there in the corner of the room, only feet away from my side of the bed. His eyes looked so bright in the darkness. He looked over at me. His gaze burrowed in on the sleeping Jane. I had enough. What do you want with her? I yelled, angrily rising from my bed. He didn't answer, but his gaze broke away from her towards me for the first time. His eyes held the madness that only angered me more. Answer me! No answer again. I walked toward him and placed a hand on his chest. Get the hell out! I pulled on him, and he reached a hand out, placing it on my forearm, holding on with a surprising amount of strength. My yelling had awakened most of the house by this point, and I saw a light flick on in the hallway. Lou, what's going on? Jane was also awake, but still not oriented enough to realize what was going on. I yanked Jeff out of the corner, pulling him close. Don't you ever come in here again. I pushed him away right as my mother and father reached the door. What's going on? What's going on in here? My dad's voice boomed out, confused. I caught this freak standing in the bedroom watching us sleep. Jeff, honey, is that true? My mother sounded concerned, as she helped Jeff to his feet. Jeff didn't answer as he pushed his way past our parents and walked back down the hallway. My parents looked at me shocked before my mother followed Jeff and my dad walked over to me. Your mother will talk to him. I don't know what's going on. Your mother and I were planning on going to another specialist next week. I don't know what's gotten into that boy. It's fine. I just don't get it. I want him to leave Jane alone. My father looked over at a now completely awake Jane, giving her a concerned look. Summer is almost over. I promise we will take care of this. Brother just needs some help. I'm gonna try to see if I can talk to him with your mother. I'm deeply sorry about all this, both of you. He turned to face Jane again. I hope he isn't making you feel too uncomfortable, Jane. We're really happy having you here. It's okay, Mr. Woods. I'm more worried for Jeff than anything. I'm enjoying my summer here. My father nodded before he squeezed my shoulder and turned away to go help my mother. Closing the door behind him, I looked at Jane and crawled back into bed. He came closer and held me and hummed. She knew that always soothed me. We didn't talk at all. I'm really liking this relationship between Lou and Jane too. I feel like it's very realistic. Like this note of she came close and held me and hummed. She always knew that soothed me. We didn't talk at all. Like I like that. I think that's a realistic good note. That felt like the last true moment of peace I had with her. She fell asleep first, and I drifted off sometime later. I swear as the darkness took me, I heard the sound of a doorknob turning creak Bro, they need some fucking locks on their door, bro. They need some locks on their door, and they need a lock on Jeff's door, bro. They need to fucking padlock him in there. The night I lost everything started completely normal. Better than usual, even. There's an L here that just needs to be edited off. Better than usual, even. Nothing spectacular had happened. My mother had spent the whole day cleaning because our uncle was visiting with his wife the next day. We spent the day helping her clean and then went out for dinner. Jeff was more responsive and even shockingly apologized, blaming his insomnia on medication. It was the calm before the storm. Oh, no, you know Jane's gonna die, and it just makes me sad, bro. I woke up to an awful stench in the middle of the night. It was so bad I knew I had to investigate. I was still in my boxers as I left the bedroom. I walked down the hallway peering into the darkness. Jeff's door was open. I had walked by it and looked in, but Jeff wasn't there. It was weird seeing that door open. I continued to follow the smell and its source down the stairs. I stepped onto the first floor and felt liquid on my bare feet. What the hell was going on? The stench was certainly down here, and I looked down at the ground, seeing pools of liquid all around. It smelled like chemicals everywhere. Even a slight hint of gasoline? I looked further and saw the grill was inside and sitting in the middle of the room, turned over. What the hell was going on here? Where was Jeff? Then I had heard loud footsteps behind me, and bam! An explosive pain on the back of my head made me fall forward into the liquid. I was blacking out, and right as I did, I heard a strange sound. Who was playing with matches? I woke up in a massive amount of pain, smelling burnt flesh. I groggily picked my head up and saw my arm was engulfed in flames. I watched as my skin bubbled like bacon, my flesh turning to putty as the flames seared across my arm. I screamed in pain, adrenaline kicked in, and I fought my way to my feet to escape the approaching flames around me. I whacked my arm on the rug below the stairs, beating at the flames. As I did, the rug took chunks of melted skin off, the burns growing as the flames died down. My skin was covered in dark spots. A sea of flames were now traveling their way up the stairs onto the ceiling. I looked down and saw a bloody rock near me. Jeff. I charged up the stairs, supporting myself against the wall that was slowly heating up. I looked down the hall, fire still raging. I ran towards my parents' bedroom. I busted into the still mostly intact bedroom to see a bloodbath. My mother, oh God, my mother. She laid there. Her entrails had been tugged out and spread across the bed. She was covered in deep cuts and slashes, her eyes gouged out and jaw seemingly shattered. I ran over to the other side to see my father, also badly torn up, covered in his own blood and my mother's. I felt tears streaming down my face. Jeff couldn't have done it. I couldn't believe it. I screamed in agony and my heart shattered. That's when my father coughed. I looked at him and grabbed his head. Dad. Yeah, and you're right, Rude, dude. The way that the parents interact, like, it's very endearing, which is making it that much harder because I know where the story's going, at least somewhat, and so that's what's a bummer about it, you know? I'm like, oh, oh, poor Jane and poor mom and dad, you know, because they're actually like loving, caring parents, so it's that much worse at the scene we're now getting. Dad, Dad, I saw his eyes flutter open and he weakly raised his arm. I grabbed him off the bed. My father had always been a few inches shorter than me after I was done growing, so I was able to get him out of bed. He was heavy, but I couldn't let him die like this. The flames began to enter the room as I stumbled out, supporting him with my shoulders. I looked down the hall and I could hear her screams. Oh God, he was in there with Jane. I looked at my father, then back down the hall. The flames had engulfed the stairs and the entrance to Jeff's room. I was cut off. I couldn't get to her. My tears had turned to rage through the flames. I swear I could see him, the scarred and burned visage of my brother. He was smiling. I turned around, looking at the second floor window. With no choice, I picked up a wooden stand from the hallway and threw it at the window, shattering it. I tried with as much finesse as I could to let my father down slowly, but he was dead weight and fell the last 4 feet before landing on the grass, lifeless. I felt the heat on my heels and I jumped out the window, landing on the ground with a painful thud. I dragged my father away from the front of the house. I was weak, I was tired, I was broken. I collapsed in the front lawn as neighbors charged towards me. I heard the sirens getting closer, and as I sat there holding my father, I swear I could see her in the window, Jane. It was only for a moment, then she seemingly disappeared. My life was over in the matter of minutes. My brother had torched and brutalized everything and everyone that meant anything to me. I hoped he died in those flames. His wretchedness did not deserve to live. I felt myself being tugged on and voices talking to me. I was exhausted. I felt the sweet embrace of darkness and let it envelop me. My father spoke for the first time a week later. He was placed on painkillers to keep him stable and not in constant pain, so they knocked him out for a while. He had better days than others, but his speech was not there yet. When he finally did speak, his first words were, "Where is Melissa?" Her name hurt me. Hearing it out loud brought immeasurable pain. I didn't respond. If I had, I was sure he wouldn't have even remembered. I sat there in silence. Then I heard the TV say something. I grabbed the remote, turning up the volume. The house burned down with 5 people inside and 2 escaping to safety, and 1 body was found after the initial investigation. The other occupants are still missing at this time. After the fire, a series of families were found slaughtered in their homes. The police are still saying the events are unconnected. I turned the volume back down and sat there in silence. Had Jeff done this? Had he survived those flames and murdered those families? Why was I even asking? Of course it was him. I turned the corner, and for the briefest of moments, I saw him standing there. My mind painted a picture of his scarred face. Where is Melissa? Go to sleep, Dad. Just go to sleep. Finn. That was great, dude. Fuck yeah. That was like, at the beginning, with when it was a Jeff the Killer remake, you know, I figured you would take it in a more serious direction, but that was really good. Now I'm wondering, though, and this is gonna bum me out because I really liked Jane. So did Jeff somehow disfigure? Because I know that there's the whole Jane the Killer thing too. So did Jeff is he gonna like brainwash Jane or torture Jane till she wants to kill people too, like him? Or is Jane, was Jane evil the whole time? Like, did she kill her parents? Or what I hope happens in part two, cool, hell yeah, a technical sequel, nice. Okay, well, I was like, or in part two, are this is what I hope happens, and let me just put this out there that I hope that Jane is still a good, nice person, but that she is like placating Jeff and trying to stay alive, and she's being smart. And my hope is that Lou saves her. Yeah. And my hope is that Lou saves her. Although I know Jane the killer is technically a thing, I'm hoping that the Jane is in your story is a good Jane that Lou can save and kill Jeff. Because that's what needs to happen, you know. Our narrator needs to throw down with Jeff, which is what I wanted to do in my story. I wanted it to be about him finding Jeff and doing all that, but then the problem was that I got so caught up with writing what happened to Lou after he was, you know, almost murdered by his brother, that in my story I ended up just writing this whole other story of Lou's origin story and how Lou becomes a anti-hero killer slash whatever the fuck you want to call it. Lou is scarred, yeah, but he's a good person. His arm is burnt, but he isn't evil. Yeah, no, I know Lou isn't evil. Jeff is completely burned. He's burned, torn up, gone. He's no longer there. Jane is half burned, so she has some evil in her, mostly from vengeance. Okay, interesting. Cool. Not as expertly written as the original. Yeah, that's no. Yeah, this is certainly better than the original. Although you have to argue that the original is so bad that it is somehow expertly written. So I agree with that sentiment, but no. This is a lot more fun. I care about the characters. I want Jeff to get his comeuppance. I want Lou to either save Jane or still be with Jane, and I want them together to kill Jeff. You know, I think that's fine. I think that's cool for a sequel. It's just the story of Jeff killing those family. It's more Halloween 2 than the original. Okay. Hell yeah. And that's cool. That's awesome. I like that. You know, I encourage everyone to go read his, you know, creeping sequel. But this was a lot of fun. And here's the thing about the origin story is about this remake of the origin stories, I like how much you changed. I like how much you didn't, like, I thought you would still have the part with the Randy and the bullies and the party, but it's like, no, Jeff's just a psychopath, pretty cut and dry, who, you know, you left the name Randy in there, but Randy's just a little 9-year-old kid who Jeff fucking bludgeons with a rock. And I think that's all great. I think that's super cool. This story is technically a part of the creepypasta universe I'm writing. Very cool. Well, I like that. And that's cool that you're building out, you know, a universe of, I'm assuming it's maybe going to have other creepypasta characters in it that are like rewritten or whatever. And that's fun. Are you writing a creepypasta universe in that it's going to be like all of the monsters or bad people like the Jeff the Killers or the Mr. Bears? are they gonna all cross over into each other's stories? Yeah, and Lou saying go to sleep to his dad. I liked it. Yeah, and I like those nods to the original because you're saying that, like, you know what happens in the original. You're not just using the name Jeff the Killer but writing a completely new story, but at the same time. Okay, hell yeah. That's cool. I saw you say something about a Tiki Toby one. Yeah, that's fun. So I'm guessing all, like, these Jeff the Killer, these Tiki Tobys, they're gonna cross over into each other's stories. I'm wondering if Lou's gonna still be in the story. Like, is Lou gonna be a good force in these stories, or is he gonna be a protagonist while the Jeff the Killers and the Tiki Tobys? Although Tiki Toby was kind of an anti-hero too, wasn't he? It was like his alcoholic father that he, or like stepfather, or whatever it was that he ends up like killing or whatever. I don't know. Very fun though. Very cool. Yeah, just a good story. I mean, you could essentially change the names of Jeff and Lou and like Jane, and then you could just have a good, like, you could just have a good story here, totally separate of the whole Jeff the Killer universe. But I appreciate that you want to, you know, do your own creepypasta universe, and I think that's fun because you won't then run out of ideas or things to rewrite. Like, you'll always have some source material to go back to and then just kind of reinvent however you want. I think that's really fun. Yeah, Lou will continue. His story isn't finished. That this is the end of a romantic relationship for Jane and Lou. They don't get back together. No! We love Jane and Lou. That makes me so sad, but I'm a romantic and I get it, and creepypastas aren't necessarily supposed to be romantic. So I get that. That's fair. I could understand why Jane would fall out of love with Lou after his little brother fucking burned her, killed her, tried to kill her, whatever. That all seems very fair. So I can abide by that. I can allow that. But I'm still hoping, hey, it's just me, but I won't give up on love. You, Professor Creepin, you might think the story shouldn't go in that way, but I'm going to hold out hope for love because I will always keep a candle burning in my heart for love, okay? And that's just who I am, okay? Oh, Lou does end up dating a different creepypasta character, though. Is it David King? Does Lou end up having a homosexual relationship with David fucking King? or maybe Tiki Toby starts banging Jane, and then maybe Lou. I'm trying to think. Lou hooks up with Bristol. Um, from Left Right Game. Is that it? Who hurt you? No one hurt me, bro. I'm a romantic at heart. I believe in love. Just because you guys don't believe in love doesn't mean I can't believe in love, okay? That's the thing, is like, I've loved and lost, and I still choose to believe in love above all. And I'm getting married here in like 6 months. So I'm stoked, bro. I couldn't be happier. But yes, I have been hurt, but I would rather feel that pain than feel nothing at all. Pain without love, pain. Can't get enough pain. Like it raw, cause I'd rather feel pain than nothing at all. Ah, okay. You don't know who yet. Well, I want to put my hat in, or my I want to put Bristol. I think Lou could hook up with Bristol from Left Right Game. Although she becomes a giant like electrical storm god, I think that would be cool to see Lou have sex with the giant electrical storm god. Um or who's another female character? We don't have that many female characters, do we? That seems to be an issue with the creepypasta community. We need more female characters, more good female characters. Ugh. Ah shit. Oh, oh. Oh fuck. Ooh. I put the left right game in classic creepy pastas. Okay. The fanfic, yeah, the fanfic is writing itself for sure. I may have to write a fanfic within the context of your creepy pasta universe, Professor Creepin, in which or maybe Officer, what was her name? Barkley, Officer Barkley from uh I keep getting called to the same house. You know, maybe Officer Barkley, she puts the handcuffs on Lou, if you know what I'm saying, you know. They get a little freaky with it. Something like that. You know, it could be fun. I think it's worth exploring. But yeah, we won't know. We won't know until Professor Creepin writes it, but well, that's gonna do it, guys, for my stream. I also there are basically no, yeah, there are no, yeah, people of color creepypastas, which I feel bad about. It's all white people. Yeah, oh, Alice Sherma, Storm God Smut would go crazy on the subreddit. No, I know it would. I know it would. That's what I'm saying, dog. That's what I'm talking about, homie. And she is Indian technically, so I guess she is. That's a good, and I feel like Left Right Game is, maybe it's not classic creepy pasta, but it is. I mean, it's pretty major. Like people think about it when they think of creepy pastas. Yeah, and I think honestly, I think that's just a classic problem with horror anyways. That's, is that it is mostly seen as like a specific, or it's hard for like minorities to break into or get representation in. And that's why I liked Sinners for, I mean, Sinners was good as just a horror movie, but what I thought was so dope about Sinners, it was this perfect marriage between like a gangster, uh not even gangster, but like one of those an outlaw movie, and then a fucking cuz like I love those stories about the old outlaws. Like I love that movie Lawless with like Tom Hardy and Shia LaBeouf. And so you have that, and then you have the whole vampire angle too, and I thought that was really cool. But yeah, so I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see some stories that are like, yeah, I live in New York, and I ride the subway or something, like, because Glenmont Metro was at in like a city, but I like there to be like a creepy pasta. Like I ride the subway and I keep seeing the same guy every day on the subway, or just something weird like that would be a cool idea for for some more diverse creepypastas, so to speak. Referenced left right game somewhere. Yeah, that would be fun. That could be dope for sure. But yeah, that's gonna do it for my stream, anyways, guys. I appreciate you all stopping by. Um, Professor Creepin, Rude Dude, Pitiful, yeah, Pitiful Scream. Um, let's start like a group chat in Discord or whatever. And let's all talk about getting together to read some spooky stories. I think that would be super fun. And once again, so thank you to Professor Creepin, and it goes by NoBoat9770. Thank you to Fancy Phoenix, or underscore Fancy underscore Phoenix underscore YT for Fancy Phoenix YouTube. They have a YouTube channel too. People should check out. I'm not sure what type of stuff they post, but anyways, they're on YouTube, so check them out. And then also TJ Schultz 61. Thank you all for letting me read your stories. I look forward to seeing where I shouldn't have recorded this therapy session, where that winds up. I do think there are more parts coming forthwith. And yeah, just thank you guys. Pitiful. Yeah, that would be fun as hell. I think we should just have a group chat to just talk about it, but then I also think, like, we can hammer out some details, and I'd love if the next time I streamed, whether we stream on mine or stream on like you said, doing Creepin on Professor Creepin's, I would love to just get together and chat with some of you guys on Discord or whatever, on a voice chat. And we could even do that too. We could just voice chat and not stream it first, and just all kind of get familiar, like talking with each other. And then if we want to, we can pick out some stories and read them, and that would be super fun. Or we can just talk about, we could do like a creep cast wrap up, or not wrap up show, but just like like what Creepin is. Creepin's just like, an intermittent show where you talk about the story and stuff like that and what you think. And I think it'd be super fun to just, yeah, do it with some of you guys. So I'm down. Yeah. And that's all I have to say about that. Um Thank you so much for watching the Red Death Mask stream. Please send me your stories if you want me to read them, and I would love to. And then please, yeah, please, send me. What are we gonna call people that watch the Red Death Mask stream? Red Deadheads? I don't know. Anyways, peace out, guys. Thank you all for stopping by. Appreciate you. Auf Wiedersehen.